And okay, YouTuberverse, what's happening here? Gas masks and hand grenades returns after a hiatus. We had to move the studio. Studio. Get it? Okay. Anyways, I just made that up on the spot. That was not a planned joke there, but
Jeff, you're improvising.
yes, I'm improving. Yeah.
Don't do it all at once. You know, we got a long gig to get through here.
I know. I'll try to keep the jokes to a minimum, folks. But you know, tonight. Anyway, so we were away for a little while here. I had to move and set up shop and get new internet, and I got great internet finally. So because I watched some of my last stream from last Saturday, and I don't freeze up and get robotic, and it's awesome, man. It's so cool. But anyway, tonight we're gonna do a deep dive on one of the proverbial Prog legends, the legendary bands of Prog. And I sat down and kind of looked at, a list of those bands, and there's a lot that I'm probably going to miss. But, when we think of progressive music, there are probably about 8 or 10 bands that come to mind as being, the dinosaurs or the grandfathers of Prog. King Crimson, obviously, possibly the very first as far as putting an album out. You got Pink Floyd, you've got Jethro Tull, you've got Van der Graaf Generator, you've got ELP, absolutely, and Gentle Giant. I mean, there's a whole number of bands that were behind this burgeoning genre of music, which is a really good topic for a Gas Mask and Hand Grenade future episode to talk about the origins of Prog and all that stuff, but that's for a later day. So what I decided to do is, and the band we're going to talk about tonight, Genesis. What I kind of wanted to do, and it's strange because Genesis are not my favorite Prog band from that group of bands I just named. They're probably maybe third or fourth favorite. But the reason I decided to go with them was I wanted to, I got a bunch of metal-centric stuff coming up, planned in the works, in the pipeline. And I kind of wanted to get, Lee and I did Marillion 3 or 4 weeks ago, whatever it was. I think that was the last one that I did, I think. And, Marillion was a neo-prog band. But then I thought, well, I really should have a prog band in here proper. And we talked amongst ourselves quickly in the last week or so. And, Chuck is my prog dork nerd guy. And Lee is the younger prog dork protege. And so what I wanted to do was I wanted to start with a band that was a little easier and Genesis is relatively easy for a couple reasons. One, they didn't have a ton of lineup changes like King Crimson, who has massive wholesale album to album changes often. Excuse me.
As does Yes.
Jethro Tull is Jethro Tull's a deep dive, man. There's a lot of fucking albums there, and they're probably my favorite of that. And I kind of more, in a weird way, I kind of think they're more of a rock band than a prog band, but it's kind of 1 or 1A with them. In fact, Thick as a Brick was made as a piss take by Ian Anderson about Genesis and Supper's Ready and whatnot. So, and I didn't really want to get into that, and I figured the best way to do this would be to dip our toes in, and the three of us kind of agreed this might be the way to go. So in saying that, I want to welcome Lee to his second Gas Mask and Hand Grenade soiree, so to speak.
Thanks for
and I
having
got
me.
Chuck back after a long hiatus. And it's gonna be fun to go into this stuff. But one other quick programming note here, or two rather, is that I want to thank Dreadful Rick again for the killer thumbnail. And it's interesting because the initial idea that I came up for that was to take Trick of the Tail and throw our faces on it. But it was kind of like, I have to say, with Genesis, cover art is not their greatest forte, in my opinion. They don't have the Marillion, character with the crazy. They don't have the and King Crimson. They don't have the early King Crimson with the amazing, artwork for in the chord face. And in the chord, and even Wake Up Poseidon is really, really cool. I mean, so a lot of their stuff.
Even their logo changed over the years, you know.
Exactly. Rick pointed that out. He's like, I don't have one specific logo I can kind of gravitate towards. And so, but anyways, Rick did a hell of a job there. And at the last minute, literally like a couple days ago, I got this concept of, hey, what if we take the really good albums on one side and we put the really shitty albums? And yeah, there are some shitty albums, and we're going to talk about that briefly, on the other side, and we get in the middle of it and we kind of make fun of or shit on the shitty albums. Now, you guys may have a different take than I do about those albums. I doubt it, but maybe you do. I don't know. And we'll get to that later on since we don't script any of this stuff. But again, guys, thanks for joining me. Really appreciate it. I guess the first place to start, and we'll start with you, Lee, since you are the junior member here. You're in with two old fuckers, basically. How did you come to learn about or get into Genesis?
I guess it's kind of twofold. You know, in terms of the pop stuff, I would just naturally hear that on the radio growing up. My parents liked Genesis, but, you know, they were too busy playing Meatloaf in the car. So I didn't, hear it all the time. But the stuff that they liked and I still like is that early pop stuff, which would be kind of like the later 70s stuff, like, Follow You, Follow Me. That was like a hit that I kind of could get behind. But then I really figured out my true love for the albums that you'll find out that I prefer in early college. So in college, I was in a band, and I took a lot of inspiration because I'm a drummer from Bill Bruford, and then also, of course, Phil Collins here, but then Neil Peart. So like kind of the obvious ones, but I just really, really fell in love with Genesis in college, as well as Yes, King Crimson. So I just went in a huge phase. And, that was roughly 10, 11 years ago. And I consistently listened to the albums. So definitely love the band. I've never seen them live, unfortunately. And I think even if I saw them live now, it wouldn't be the same thing. You really can't relive the past. You don't get to choose when you're born. But, and I think people have talked about this before, the music that you listen to in high school and early college, that's the stuff that makes the biggest emotional imprint on you. So despite me being young and not being when it was, live and everyone was talking about us on the radio and everything, it did hit me at a very impactful part of my life. And that music will always bring back good memories. So do love the band a ton. But cool. I think that's pretty much my story with the band.
So this was when you were a kid, your parents were playing that stuff in the car. What are we talking about? We're talking about the later pop period, or the beginning of the pop period, really is, and then there were three, Duke, Genesis, Abacab, that kind of stuff like that.
I was really just familiar with the songs that were on, and then there were three and Duke, and then Abacab and Invisible Touch. But I think they just had a greatest hits album. They weren't playing the whole thing through. And then I also just heard it on the radio. And then Phil Collins, I'm a kid of the 90s, right? So Phil Collins was huge in the 90s. So, someone mentioned the chat Tarzan. Yeah, dude. I mean, that shit was I was 6, and it hit me really hard too. And him being a percussionist and a singer, he's always kind of stuck with me, even though he is a bit of a cheeseball sometimes. But yeah, and then Peter Gabriel, my aunt loved Peter Gabriel. She gave me a VHS of Peter Gabriel live that I would watch, but I was too busy trying to get into new metal at the time, so I didn't listen to it a lot. But it's just being that age, being around your late 20s or 30s.
Well, this will show you how old I am. I don't even know what you're talking about with the Tarzan thing. And I had kids, though, so I should know that, right? My kids were... Yeah,
they're not that
much
far
younger
from me.
than you, Lee. My son is 26 years, or almost 27 at this point, so I don't remember that. Did he?
He did the whole soundtrack.
Oh, he did?
Tarzan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I know he got into the soundtrack thing during that period of time, and you're right. Phil Collins was everywhere. We're going to talk about that a little later in the segment here. Phil. I was calling you Phil. What the fuck?
Phil Chuck.
Well, I'm talking about Phil. All right, what do we got? What do we got, Chuck? Where you get to really come in with the Grand Slam here because you were, late teens, early 20s when this music was happening.
Well, I first heard it when I was probably 17 years old in 76. I had some friends that were older than me, one of who saw a live show of Genesis. I think it was either Foxtrot or, Selling England by the Pound, or it was
Wind and Wuthering, or Trick of the Tail.
Trick of the Tail. It had to be Trick of the Tail. So, I used to work nights with this guy, and I go over to his house afterwards, and he had Wind and Wuthering. Back in the day when FM radio stations would play the entire album when it came out.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So, everybody that had a tape deck, a blank cassette would tape it. So that's how I was introduced to the band, was through that. And then the following year, or when I became roommates, 78, with a couple of brothers, they had Lamb Lies Down. And that was the first time I heard that. But I had been hearing a lot of the songs, 78, 79 to 80, on a radio station I was listening to that played every Sunday night. Greg Stone was the DJ. He had a show called Stone Trek. He played a lot of Genesis, a lot of Pink Floyd, and he had a lot of bootleg tapes of live Genesis that he would play on broadcast FM. So I heard a lot of these songs going all the way back to Trespass and Nursery Crimes and so forth, and I just didn't know. My bird's acting up here. I just didn't know what songs those albums came, or the albums that those songs came off of. Okay. But I bought my first album in 78, which was, and then there were three. And then
that was your first one that you got.
That was the first one I bought. I had on tape Trick of the Tail, Seconds Out, Wind and Wuthering. But that was the first album that I bought.
Okay. All right. Which ties in with me in a small little way because, being a child of the 70s, but I was a child. I mean, I was, in 76, I was 10 years old. So when by that time, Peter Gabriel had already left the band.
Right.
And so I was not really, and the other thing to mention here is that Genesis really didn't have much airplay in the States early on because they didn't really have a hit until a hit. And when I say hit, I'm talking about a very minor hit until Own Special Way on Trick of the Tail. So
Wind and Wuthering.
Wind and Wuthering. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Wind and Wuthering. And
so late 76.
And really, actually, probably the other song that may have gotten some play in the States, but wasn't by no means was it a hit. It was probably I Know What I Like in Your Wardrobe, which would have been off of Selling England. So I wouldn't have known who this band was. I really just wouldn't have, unless an older cousin or brother. Well, I didn't have any brothers, but an older cousin or uncle or something like that would have said something to me about it, and I don't recall that. The first time I recall being aware of Genesis was hearing the song Follow You, Follow Me, which is off of And Then There Were Three, which is 78. And at that point, I didn't really, I probably heard it in 79 or 80. I really don't think I heard that in 1978. I seem to recall hearing it on the radio in 1980 when I moved up from Texas back to Pennsylvania. And then, of course, I remember very distinctly hearing Misunderstanding and Turn It On Again off of Duke. And so that was who I thought Genesis was at that time. Surprisingly, it took me probably the better part of the 80s into the early 90s to really dive into Genesis and figure out, oh, wait, there's a whole lot of stuff here that isn't that stuff. And those are both decent albums. They're decent. They definitely take up the tail end of my likes list. But there's some very, very good tracks on And Then There Were Three. And there's a couple of good tracks on Duke, but that's when things start to change. And we'll get there when we get there. But I always thought this was... Whoa.
Hello, Jeff.
Now I just cut the fuck out. You got to be kidding me. Hold on. Well, that was very odd. Hope that was on there. And I'm okay, right?
Yeah, everything's
Okay.
good.
As far as we
It's
can
very-
tell.
It just clicked just for a second there. Another thing I want to add here before we start into the actual discography and the history here is that one of the things I think that makes Genesis kind of unique from the other monster prog bands of the era is that, along with maybe one other band, that being ELP, this band is predominantly throughout their history have been a keyboard dominated band versus a guitar dominated band. Now,
Yeah, absolutely.
A band like Yes, they had the combination pretty well locked in, that you had a lot of Rick Wakeman, you had a lot of Steve Howe. Jethro Tull, you had a lot of Ian Anderson's flute, you had a lot of his acoustic guitar, and you had a lot of Martin Barr's electric guitar. Keys never were like a central part of it. You look at Vandergraaf Generator, they used a lot of woodwinds, and the keys were probably a little more central to them than other bands, and also in Gentle Giant, but they weren't like a Floyd or a Tull or a Rush, because you could say Rush is a prog band. I mean, they're a little later and they're a little bit more Zeppelin and more of a hard rock band, but they were they were the neo prog, or the prog progenitors of proto prog, in my opinion, prog metal anyways. So a lot of, and Crimson, clearly very, very guitar oriented. Yes, you had the Mellotron, but there wasn't a lot of tinkly bits of keyboard stuff going on in King Crimson. It was Robert Fripp, and it was some of the woodwinds, but that was pretty much it.
And Phil's with Mellotron, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So Gentle Giant might be in that. They're kind of in that quasi Yes period or era where a lot of good guitar, but a lot of very Kerry Minier, I think that's his name, really, really killer keyboardist and pianist.
Yeah,
but
highly vocal band too.
Right. Oh, and that you're right,
everything.
and probably that's the big signature of Gentle Giant is all
Yeah.
the crazy vocals. But of all the bands other than ELP, who outshines Genesis clearly on the keyboard domination, Genesis is probably the number 2 band that I'd say from the and I'm going to bring in a black metal reference here. The first wave of prog. There we go.
Yeah. Chuck knows exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Of course I do.
The first wave of prog bands, all those Dino prog bands are, and I don't say that, I don't use Dino as a negative. Yeah. I'm just saying in a funny sort of way. Those bands were predominantly either mixed or guitar oriented, but Genesis really was not. And what really stood out to me as I researched these albums, as I watched some documentaries, as I read, I always thought, once I learned about Genesis, that Peter Gabriel was the driving force of Genesis. Tony Banks. Tony Banks is clearly the fucking leader. He's clearly the dominant songwriter. He's clearly the forceful personality in the band too, which led to some people leaving, and Mike Rutherford as well. Mike's in there as well. So, so I just wanted to make sure my notes are all there, that I kind of hit what I needed to. Yeah, I like that first wave of prog thing. I thought that was pretty cool.
You wrote that down, huh?
I did. I had to, man.
It's a good zinger.
Dude, I got so much going on here. It's crazy. All right, so very brief history. The band, I'm going to show a picture here. This school year.
Yeah, I'll pull it up. Well, I got to find the page.
Okay. You didn't mark it.
Jeez.
I know.
Jeez.
Not prepared.
Rookie.
All right, here's a young picture of the band.
There we go.
So they're
I'll
like
find the school
teenagers then.
15 and 16, I think, when they started. That's nuts. Here we go.
Okay, so that is a picture of the Charterhouse Public School, where Peter Gabriel, Tony Banks, Anthony Phillips, and Mike Rutherford met, and they were all pretty much in the same. I don't know if they were the same grade or the same 2 grades.
So there's Gabriel and Tony right there at the top.
Oh wow!
Took me a second to find them in the sea of white people, but I found them.
Yeah, right. Oh no! Now we're gonna get banned. Way to go, Lee.
Oh, come on.
Wait. There's white people living in the UK? What? All right. Anyway, so they met at this public school, and they were all involved in theater and music and whatnot. And they decided they started, they created a band, quote unquote, a band. But what they really did as a group was they determined that they wanted to be songwriters. Okay, that's what year is that right there?
That's probably 68, 69. You got Anthony Phillips in there.
Okay.
The young pictures, those are all the ones I got here. But,
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. And what is that book again, so that people, if they want to get it?
Is Genesis Chapter and Verse. Probably published about 15 years ago or so.
Okay. And it's all, is there actual...
lots of words, but it's all interviews.
Okay,
so
it's interviews.
There's like Mayhew's interview.
Okay, cool. Now, I will say that if you really want to learn about Genesis, there is a ton of stuff on YouTube, a ton of interviews. They're a pretty open band. They are pretty, I watched a ton of stuff about the making of, Nursery Crime and Foxtrot and Lamb Lies Down, and they're very open about what was going on at the time with inner band dynamics and whatnot. Great stuff out there. So, but the thing to note about the band at this point is that they were primarily looking to be a songwriters band, and in the UK, particularly in the 60s, when the Beatles were rising and the Stones were rising, they were kind of antithetical. There was publishing houses where they would have songwriters or songwriting groups that would write songs for, and basically what they were looking for was one-hit wonders, where they would write, and the Bee Gees were this. They wrote songs for a lot of people back in the 60s, and this was kind of initially what the guys in Genesis, this core group of musicians, wanted to do. They wanted to write songs for other people. In doing so, and doing some actual playing and at the recitation hall and in the probably in the amphitheater or whatever, the school and whatnot, there was another student. I believe Jonathan King was a student there as well. Correct?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was an older student, and he heard them playing and decided to sign them to a contract. And I don't really understand the dynamics of this guy as far as how he, as a school student, somehow had a publishing company, because apparently he did. And I guess he had some ties. Oh, that's right. He was a singer. He had a one-hit song in, I think, 65 or something as a teenager. Mm-hmm. I can't remember the damn name of the song. Are you looking it up right now, Lee?
Yeah, I'm on Wikipedia. So
yeah, look up.
Keep going, and I'll kind of butt in.
When you get to that, let's fill people in on that. But he coaxed the boys into getting into a studio. I think it cost him £40 to get them into a London studio, and he even got them a contract with Decca. Now, he wanted to sign them to a 10-year contract.
Right.
But the
parents got involved. Yeah.
Correct. The parents got involved and said, nah, because they didn't really want their kids to be rock stars. They wanted them to be a doctor and a lawyer and all that good stuff. And they said, we'll do a one-album deal with you, which turned out to be very fateful, because I think if they'd have been locked in with this guy for 10 years, they never would have went anywhere, potentially. You never know. It's hard to know. What you got, Lee?
So you're correct. 1965, top 5 single in the UK. It's called Everyone's Gone to the Moon.
That's it.
And he was an alumni at the time.
He was an alumni. Okay,
so he wasn't actually in the school, but he
okay, that's what I thought. That sounded weird that he was a student there. So he had some money. Clearly, he'd made some money with that one single that he had this top 5 single hit with. And he obviously had connections with studios, with labels, and he got him this deal with Decca. And so it was kind of a little bit of a fortuitous thing for them. And basically, they went in and recorded this album of very much pop songs. Now, I must admit, I've known about this album. Did somebody pull it up, the artwork, Chuck?
I tried to see if I could put it into the comments there, and it just says.
Oh, it won't do that. But do you have it on your phone there? That we
can
I do.
Get
it, maybe?
Yeah, it's basically
pretty uneventful. It's a black album with
black album that just says from Genesis to Revelations.
Yeah, you can't even see it with the lighting.
Which is
okay.
yeah. So I can't even enlarge this.
So that album comes out in March 7th of 1969. And it is, again, it's Mike Rutherford, it's Peter Gabriel, it is Tony Banks, and it is Anthony Phillips, and a guy named John Silver on drums, which was another schoolmate. Now, keep in mind, these guys at this point in time are I guess when the album comes out, they're 18, 19 years old. But they were actually younger than that, I believe, when they recorded it initially, or in that range.
Yeah.
I
thought I
read somewhere that the one guy was 17, might have been the drummer. So, they're in that Death Angel territory right there,
Yeah.
Gotta get that in.
The album is called, what's that?
Gotta get that in, those references.
Well, Death Angel, people that are metal guys will know what I'm talking about. Death Angel wrote their first album. Most of those guys were 14, 15 years old, 16 years old. And it's one of Thrash's masterpiece albums. Okay, so from Genesis to Revelation, very Brit poppy, Baroque. These are my notes real quick on. Then when we start into the regular albums, Lee, we'll start with you and we'll go around.
Okay.
I had never listened to this album before. Never. I'd never listened to it. I knew of it. I'd always kind of heard, oh, it's not really Genesis. Doesn't really sound like Genesis. And that's true. It doesn't really sound like what we think of Genesis sounding. However,
there's hints of it there.
There's hints, sure. I mean, obviously, Peter Gabriel's voice is the big one.
Yeah.
And Tony Banks' piano playing is pretty extravagant and pretty. But all these songs are 3 to 5 minute, 4 minute pop songs. And they're very British. There's a little bit of psychedelia in there, not much. Not like, Incense and Peppermints or, Electric Prunes or, Inagata Davida. Nothing like that. It's what it is quirky British sounding pop music.
Right, Britpop.
But the part of it that's pretty fucking cool is they're not bad songs. There's several that are actually quite good, and I'm a sucker for strings, man. When I hear that 60s music with strings, I am all over it. I fucking love that shit. Yeah. And I was like, wow, this album is far better than I would have expected it to be. Now, it wasn't good enough for me to rush right out and pay $20 for it to add it to the collection, but it was definitely something that got my attention and held my attention. Again, the strings were added post-recording. Real quick here.
The strings and the horns were arranged by a couple of different conductors, from what I understand. They were he did it after the band recorded their songs. Right. The band didn't know that he was going to do that.
Exactly.
Oh, yep.
Yeah,
so they didn't appreciate
King had them put them on, the manager.
Right.
The
exactly.
But it was done. I thought it was done by one guy. The strings was Greentree, I think his name was Arthur Greentree or something of that nature, and he was the guy. He was the guy doing stuff in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So it was a big name. I mean, to have him do the strings on there was pretty prestigious. I think the one thing, Gabriel sings slightly differently on this album than he does going forward from here. I think he sings a little bit differently even on Trespass versus Nursery Crime forward, but he sounds much more Brit, even though he sounds very British throughout all the recordings. He sounds very British on this, and he sings a little bit more falsetto. And I gotta say, man, songs like When the Sour Turns to Sweet, Fireside, what's the other ones? Silent Sun, In the Beginning, Fireside Song. They're all really, really good songs. I was like, man, I'm digging this. And I even went looking for it on eBay, trying to hope I could find a $5 copy or something like that. I didn't find one. They were all in the $20 range. And there's multiple record labels that have put this out because Jonathan King has made this his cash cow, infinitum. I mean, he reissues this thing every couple years. There's a new reissue of it. I think the latest one, though, was 2009. Wow. And just a quick additional point about Jonathan King. He was apparently arrested back in the early 00s for child molestation, did some time.
Wow.
Yeah. Sounds like he's a bit of a creeper. Now, he was actually acquitted then at one point, but accused by several other people. And he it just was like, whoa, man, this is pretty trippy. I don't think the guys in Genesis have had much to do with him since then. I know that they did try to buy the original recordings back from him.
He wanted a ton of money.
He wanted an obscene amount of money, and they just were like, we're not going to do it. So,
well, a little fun fact here, Dark Hymns from the Cold North brings up the fact that the Genesis albums, this Genesis album, didn't sell very well in the U.S. because there was a band in the U.S. already using the name Genesis.
Yep.
So they dropped the Genesis off of it, and they just used the title. So when they got to the record stores,
nobody knew.
They put them in the religious music section.
I thought it was a religious album. Yeah,
exactly. So
yep. And I don't know if they bought out that band. I think it was an LA band, like a psych band. I don't know if I can't remember if they bought the rights to the name out from them, or if
I didn't see anything about that.
Maybe that band just folded. And
I think I think that's what happened. They folded, and Genesis was able to actually put a trademark or copyright on the name.
Yeah, because I think it was the record label that told them that they had somebody else already signed under that name.
I'm going to get to comments in a minute. Let's let Lee and Chuck talk about From Genesis to Revelation.
I don't have much to say about that album that you hadn't already said, because I was really new to it as well.
Right.
Do you know, Jeff, roughly when Odessa came out by Bee Gees?
67, I want to say.
Because I think I remember reading that they were definitely inspired by that album, and that would make sense with how Genesis to Revelation sounds. So
Let me look here.
See if make a connection there. One other thing that I think is worth noting, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong here, is that
no, actually, dude, it came out in '69.
Okay.
Same year.
So they were right around the same time. Yeah. But Bee Gees had material before that, though, right? That was still kind of the chamber pop stuff.
Oh yeah, they did Idea and Horizon, and I'm getting some weird stuff here, guys. I'm gonna unplug my headphones and plug back in. So go ahead.
Yeah, one thing that I think is really interesting about Genesis is, from what I understand, Charterhouse, the school, is fairly prestigious, and I think it's mostly like upper class, white collared. That's very interesting contrast to bands like Black Sabbath, even the Beatles, that are from more of a working class background.
Great point.
And I think that we'll talk about the lineup changes a bit, but I think that's part of the reason why some members fit in and some didn't. I think a lot of it is like status and class and how they talk. I mean, listen to an interview with Tony Banks and how articulate and kind of, upper crust he talks.
Yeah, they're all pretty articulate. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it's just a different temperament, I guess I get it, but it was just interesting observation that they're different than some of the other British bands that have made a huge wave in music history. But yeah, I don't really have much to say.
It's interesting to note, Chuck just pointed this out, that Odessa actually came out in March 30th of 69, and this album came out March 7th. I think I have the box set of Idea Horizontal, I think it's called, and I'm forgetting the third album, and it's definitely Bee Gees Baroque pop era, and it's fantastic. Every Lion, Christian-Hearted Woman, and the mining disaster of whatever it's called. I forget there's a lot of killer songs on there, but it's extremely like From Genesis to Revelations. You can hear the dynamics, with the exception of one little thing. There's not nearly as much multi-part harmony going on the Genesis album, which it is happening on the Bee Gees, but there's no question that absolutely had to have been part of the influence on them to do those songs,
because they didn't Genesis didn't really sound like the Beatles much, or even Beach Boys. It was definitely more Bee Gees. It sounded like
I agree.
Kind of a little
blues,
a little bit the Birds, just a hair, but
a little bit.
This is what I heard, at least.
A little bit, and there's no question. Chuck just said
Moody Blues.
Moody Blues. There's some Moody Blues sort of.
I can definitely hear that.
There's some very Moody Blues Englishness to it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Great band.
You can hear that. So, Chuck, what you got on this?
Well, like both of you guys, I never listened to or heard any of the music from this first album, so it was a bit of an eye opener. But I was pleasantly surprised with the Britpop sound to it, with that kind of the finger snaps reverbing, and some of the play that they had with their with the strings and the horns being added to it. It reminded me of, when I was younger, in the 60s, that was kind of prevalent in the airwaves around here. So I didn't realize that Genesis started off this way. But yeah, like you said, there's a couple nuggets on it. I kind of like the piano work that Banks brings to this album, especially on the I'm Very Wrong piano solo on that one's really cool. And like you said, the Serpent Song is another good one on there. And I think one of these songs, and it might be Serpent, I might be mistaken, was kind of a tribute or a pastiche to the Bee Gees, to kind of placate King while they're
was
recording.
Was it the Bee Gees or was it Beach Boys?
Bee Gees.
Okay. I was thinking I read that it was the Beach Boys, but I could be wrong there.
It was a B band. But anyways, it was a band that started with the letter B. And but yeah, it's got some good things there, and you can definitely hear Gabriel's voice, uniqueness to it, even in this sort of format.
And so you said you had never listened to it before.
I have never listened to it before.
Did you listen the whole way through? The whole album?
Oh, like 3 times.
Yeah, and like, I don't know if you're in the same boat as me. I feel like I need to pick that album up somewhere along the line. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. You complete as you.
But I almost hate to give the money to the King guy because I don't think the band's getting anything.
Yeah, that's true. So especially after what you said, he's gone through. You can listen to it for free.
That's true. We'll hit a couple quick comments here. Where we got here? Okay. We'll just hit some quick stuff here. I don't know why I lost some early comments. So, yeah. So the Tarzan thing, right? Most imitated prog rock band. You think? I don't know if I agree with that, Mariano.
Well, Canterbury scene.
I'd say Pink Floyd would be the one.
I was going to say Pink Floyd is pretty imitated.
Yeah.
Their influence to me, Floyd's had a greater influence overall. Yes, in that same that
I
probably
see his point though. Like, if we're talking immediate copycats, Genesis had a lot of like immediate copycats in the early '70s. I feel like with the Canterbury scene, but long-standing influence, some of the other bands probably superseded. But that's just my take.
I mean, I know there's the Musical Boxes out there. That's a tribute band that does all of their albums and all their songs.
Yeah, they tour quite a bit.
Yeah, and they're pretty big. I mean, there was a band called Discipline a bunch of years ago that was, believe it or not Discipline. You'd think, oh, that's a King Crimson tribute band. No, I think they were out of Michigan, I believe. I'm pretty sure. Wisconsin, maybe Michigan, something like that. Very, very, very influenced by Genesis. Very overtly wore their influences on their sleeve, and they even did live. They did. I think they played Nearfest, and they did the Musical Box. So, what else we got here? Hey, dude, there's Eli, man, I love you, buddy, but there's no fucking defending those albums, man. I'm sorry. We'll get to that. We're not there, but when we get there, maybe I'll throw a link your way and let you jump on for a few minutes and try to show me and tell me why you are defending those albums.
That's it.
So get ready. If you really want to defend them, put your money where your mouth is. I may call upon you. Jerry Lee Lewis.
Get your notes ready.
Okay, Rick's gonna punt us into absurdity all night tonight.
Yeah.
Drunken Metalhead. Yeah, it's we're gonna inform you. We're getting there. I'm probably gonna do this just not sporadically. I'll try to catch up here. Gateway prog band, I think you mean, not Getaway. Yeah, definitely Gateway, no doubt. More pop side, and they're definitely more of a pop.
Genesis, the Getaway prog band.
The Getaway prog band, yeah. Yeah, Eli. Now you have to come on.
Bringing the spirit.
We're waiting for that. Yeah, we're gonna do and Chuck will definitely be back for that, and probably Lee as well too.
Yeah.
Just good, not the same. Kansas or another one. Yeah, Kansas. We're gonna do a deep dive on. I love Kansas. Kansas. The early Kansas is fucking killer. I call them more an AOR stadium rock band, though. I don't necessarily. They've got a lot of prog. They're even less proggy than Genesis when it comes to. I think they're more of a rock band, for me. Better album titles. Yeah. What do we got here? Aren't as cool because they lack Harlequin. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Rick, man. Every Harlequin and Jester, I mean, Killing Joke, Harlequin, Jester, Marillion. I rest my case. Kansas most known for that old. Yeah, right. Oh, that's right. They were.
Yeah.
What a thing. So I made it on time. Oh, cool, man. Hopefully you're sticking it out. You'll probably call me out for all kind of inaccuracies and fuck ups. Yes, it was definitely hard to get girls at a rock. Well, I never tried to get girls at an art rock place, and I definitely didn't wear face paint. Okay. What do we got here? Genesis created a really Baroque sound in the Prog universe. Yeah, I would say that because of Tony's playing.
Mm-hmm.
Crimson literally called them. Yeah, they did. Thrack Dinosaur. You're right.
That's a good track.
It is good. I'm a dinosaur.
Yeah.
All Rutherford needed was a miracle. Oh, see what I mean? See?
Yep.
You get him started, man.
Just skip over Rick's comments.
Get him started and you acknowledge him, and he's like a spigot you can't turn off, you know? Fun fact, yes, we already hit that. Yep, Jeff likes strings, particularly this. See?
Yeah.
But you know he's not wrong about that. I'm just going to say. All right. Rick, I'm now putting you on ignore. All right, man.
That's
what do
just
you
a
got?
comment on the comments.
Hey.
Okay. Hey, Lila, what's up? She's
Thanks
like
for checking in.
She's like,
we're not born you too bad.
She's like, this is my dad hanging out with a bunch of fucking nerds. Oh,
yeah.
Pardon my language, sorry.
You only hears it when you're talking.
I was gonna say, Lila, if you're gonna be on here, you better be prepared. There's gonna be a few f-bombs dropped. I apologize, but you're over 18 now, so yeah. All right, nobody gonna defend illegal alien. That's something. Yeah. Terrible. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on to what I guess you could call the first proper Genesis album, which is called Nursery Crime, and it was released 11/12/71. Let's take a look at it here.
Let's do Trespass first.
Oh, Trespass. How do I fuck that up? What do I?
Got to have your notes, Jeff.
Oh, I know why. All right, sorry.
Did you want to do history on Trespass?
Yeah, first opinion. Yeah, I'll run through a little bit and then I'll let you. But go ahead. Let's take a look at it. Put it up there again.
Yeah.
So that was released October 23rd, 70. And something I noticed about Genesis is they release a lot of albums in September, October, and November. It's kind of interesting. Not all, but a lot of them come out then. So, And if you look, that's the full portrait there, and there's a knife. And that's
a literal slash.
A
literal
slash,
yes. Yeah.
He actually cut the painting.
So some of this material on Trespass was left over. We'll come back to you here shortly. From Genesis to Revelation album. And they became much more involved. The tracks did at this point. They're very and we talked about the fact that this Jonathan King had them signed to a 1-album deal. And when that album failed, in America in particular, and didn't do all that well at the British charts, the guys in the band were like, maybe we should go back to school and get real day jobs and think about getting real jobs and real careers. And they kind of weren't sure they wanted to do this. But pretty quickly thereafter, they decided, no, they were going to do this. And this was what they were going to pursue, was a career as professional musicians, which, back then was a different thing than it is today. Now if you're trying to pursue that as a career,
good luck.
You're lucky if you ever get past the local bars, because it's just that difficult to make happen, because there's no real record industry anymore. So, but back then there was, and they started gigging locally as initially they got a new drummer, and the drummer's name was John Mayhew, and there was actually another guy in there, I think actually, that plays on this album, right?
I thought Mayhew was on this record.
Mayhew came in, but there was somebody else that he replaced. I think that was in the studio with them at the outset of the writing.
Man, my notes are fucked here. What's going on here?
Let's see.
Because there was like Silver, there was Chris Stewart, and then Mayhew.
Stewart recorded this album, I believe, correct?
I'm double checking for you. It takes a minute because I got to look through all
What's in the liner notes on the album, isn't it?
I don't know. The Wikipedia is going to give me more accurate, so I'm going to look at it real quick.
90% sure Stewart was the guy that recorded it. And then before they went out touring, he was bounced.
Yeah. For Mayhew, right?
For Mayhew, who was probably the most professional of the 5 guys in terms of he'd played with a lot of UK-based bands. So while Lee's looking that up, you know, they put this album out again, November 23rd of 70, and there was a pretty marked switch from what they had done from Genesis to Revelations to this. It's much different albums. So I think I'm gonna wrap up albums. You guys start them. We'll go with Lee and then Chuck, and that's how we'll go through our thing. What you got there?
It says Mayhew on
It does say Mayhew. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe it was Stewart that came in and recorded. You know what it was? I think Silver was on one song from Genesis to Revelation, and Stewart did the rest of the tracks in the studio. And then when they decided to become a full-time touring band, they brought in Mayhew. I'm pretty sure how it went. I had notes on that, but somehow
it's kind of confusing in the early.
Yeah, I'm missing that
jobs.
part because I started notes. Let me look at one thing here real quick. I don't want. Oh wait, here it is. Yeah, that's how it was. So it was Silver did a track, Silent Sun, and then Stewart was the main drummer from Genesis to Revelations. And then when they decided to go full-time as a more progressive band, a more progressive rock band, they wanted a better, more experienced drummer, and John Mayhew came in. So go ahead, Lee. Tell us what you would like to tell us about the album.
I mean, do you want a hot take? Or
Sure.
This album, I think, is average, personally. I'm not a huge fan. Sorry, getting the glare. Looking for Someone, Genesis consistently has great intros, like just to albums, like album openers. And man, I love that.
Agreed.
I love the song Looking for Someone. And The Knife's awesome. But I do get a little bored in Stagnation, track number 4, and Dusk. So I think it's an album that shows a lot of potential promise. And if I was that age at that time listening to the album, I'd be like, this is really good. I want to keep up with this band. But if this was the only thing that they ever released, they would be a very small footnote in prog history, I think. But
I agree.
It shows so much potential. Tony Banks definitely carries it. Rutherford's got a great bass tone on the album too, and a great feel. He's got a good stomp to some of those tracks. Peter Gabriel sounds great. It's just the songwriting leaves a little bit to be desired in some of the tracks. Like, it just doesn't grab me as much.
It's not quite there yet.
No, yeah. It's like a 3.5, maybe a 3 out of 5, honestly. I don't reach for this one that often. I do love The Knife. Personally, I love the live takes with Collins on drums better. But I do like the album cover actually quite a bit. It's kind of got this kind of medieval type look to it, which I think's pretty neat.
It's kind of subtly menacing.
Yeah, and the fact that like he legit cut his painting, like just being an artist and imagining like destroying something you created just because the band said that they wanted to. It's like, that's such a bold thing. So it kind of sticks with me. But yeah, The Knife was a very impactful track and very important for their development. It showed that they can create an epic that captures your interest the entire way through. But some other attempts on the album, they're just kind of bloated and a little too meandering.
What's the artist's name again? I didn't write his name down. That's going to be in your...
It's Paul Whitehead, and he did the first,
4, I think, right? Nursery Crime.
He didn't do Selling England, actually.
No, he did. Okay, so he did those 3. Foxtrot and Nursery Crime,
Yeah. Interesting artist.
They're
my favorite, but interesting.
They're interesting album covers, but they're not anything that blow me away. You know what I mean?
Agree.
They're just not.
He's no Mark Wilkinson.
Chuck.
Yeah,
what do you want to say about?
With regards to the album artwork, one of the things that I used to do, if I was going to take a chance on a band when I was in the record store looking through the bins, the artwork was
selling point.
Was a selling point. Influenced me to buy several albums just
100%.
Based on the artwork, and most of them were okay, and I kept them. There might have been a few duds, but and if I was just basing all my purchases on artwork alone, I would have bypassed Trust Pass for sure.
Yeah, I would have as well.
And even when I knew about new Genesis and the band, it's just it was just kind of the artwork from the early albums wasn't up to snuff to my I guess likes.
Yeah.
But the Knife, if I can comment, the Knife was actually a nod to the band Nice in Emerson's keyboard playing on with that band. So you can kind of hear that tribute in the playing that Banks has in that. But
very organ based, right?
Yeah,
is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, which is something that Keith Emerson was in really heavy on. But Stagnation, I like the second half Stagnation, and I think it shows up in, or at least a couple of the influences of that show up later in Supper's Ready, I think, and then during their Seconds Out, I think it shows up in there. They jam it a little bit. But yeah, I'm with you there, Lee. It's just kind of doesn't really pull you in and hold your attention. It just kind of, drifts a little bit. So, again, this is another album I never really listened to, but I knew 2 of the songs off of it just from the, hearing it on the radio when I was listening to that prog rock program back in the late 70s.
Which ones? Looking for Someone and The Knife?
The Knife and Stagnation.
Oh, Stagnation. Okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool to go back and play an album for the first time. Go, oh, I've heard this song. I've heard this song. I've heard this before. So anyway, so that's it for me. It was
okay. Well, a couple notes here. I hadn't listened to this in years, probably, since 2007 when I bought it. And like both of you, in particular, Lee, it's probably a 3 or 3.5. There's some interesting aspects of the album. The thing that you note right away off the top is that the keyboards are the driving force in these songs. And being a guitar player, I like to hear my guitars. Now, a lot of these songs are very languid. They're very British sounding in a lot of ways. And by that, I mean they just have that bucolic sort of rustic sort of vibe to them that you kind of, that a lot of those English bands, prog bands like Yes and Tull were putting out there. But there wasn't, while both these guys are solid players, Ant Phillips is a really good player because he went on to be involved in early incarnations of Camel, by the way. There wasn't a lot that, like you, it really didn't hold my attention. Looking for Someone is pretty cool because the vocal parts in Looking for Someone kind of captures you right away. And it's a good tune. I got to be honest with you, probably my favorite song on the album is the second song. It's called White Mountain.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, White Mountain. It's a very mystical vibe to that song. I really, really did like that one, and there's some really, really choice, interesting guitar work going on that one. But but like I said, better. Again, it's very overall acoustically and keyboard driven. It's very pastoral, is I guess the word I'm looking for.
Oh, yeah.
Visions of Angels actually irritates the shit out of me. That Visions of Angels. Man, that track, but it's in my mind. That's the thing that bothers me. I can't forget it. I don't like it though. Stagnation is probably the strongest musical statement in that it's very complex, but it's almost too complex for its own good. There's almost too much going on, which is something that you can kind of ding Genesis in their early couple of albums, that they had tons and tons of ideas and not a lot of really good editing skills with some of their stuff. And
that would come later for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that was because there was a bit of a power struggle from the very beginning between Tony, who is clearly like the most elevated songwriter, and Peter, who is the most elevated personality in the band. I think there was a lot of dynamics going on there internally about, who was going to kind of control. They worked a lot together. They did do a lot of jams. They did a lot of composition together. But I think there was always sort of a, well, who's going to come out on the dominant end? And Tony Banks seems to be the forceful personality that always seemed to come out with his ideas being the ones that the rest of the guys, made peace with and accepted, what else here? That the one thing I will say about Stagnation is that's kind of like the really prog song on the album. It's got all the earmarks of the prog scene. The Knife is kind of the heavy track on the album. I would call it like the heavy song. I don't really love it. I know it's kind of like the track from the album that everybody knows and the one that they played live. It's okay. It doesn't blow me away. I do like his vocals on it because he sounds a little maniacal. And he's definitely developing his vocal style, which connects more fully on the next several albums. So,
well, not only that, but I think it moved Genesis away from being pop to and kind of separate them from other prog bands with that menacing vocals that he used.
Yeah, for sure.
And also some of the subject matter being kind of dark too, speaking of and so forth.
And he was very theatrical.
If you can imagine it live, I mean, it's a song that you can actually move to, whereas some of the other songs you don't really move to. So if you're just basing it off of the reaction of the audience, then I'm going to get it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And the one thing that should be mentioned with this band is that they did a lot of touring, man. And because back in England, there were a lot of clubs you could play for, and they even talked about it in some of the album interview stuff. They go to gigs where there was only 7 or 8 people, and they were out there doing their thing, and they were all so into the music and into the artistic part of this thing of being a rock band that they didn't really care if 6 people were watching or 600 people. It should be noted now, after this album comes out, it doesn't blow up. It doesn't go crazy. We should have mentioned, too, that album came out on Charisma Records, which was the fledgling label of a guy named Tony Stratton Smith. And he had seen them playing, I believe, at Ronnie Scott's and signed them to this contract. He just felt that they were such a powerful live band. And Peter Gabriel was such an intense front man. And Tony was such a great composer that he kind of saw big things on the horizon for them. So he kind of knew. And it should be noted that that's, I believe, who the heck is it? He owned Island Recording Studios, and that would have been where like Jethro Tull came through there. There was a lot of big famous bands that came through Charisma down through the years, most obviously mostly British. So that album comes out. It does okay. They do a pretty extensive tour of it. At the end of the tour, they pretty much blow out John Mayhew. I never really got. He doesn't even really. I read an interview with him. He said that the reason he feels he got fired. He didn't get fired. The reason he ended up leaving was because he felt that he wasn't measuring up to the level of musicianship that the rest of the guys were. Everyone was sort of accelerating as a musician at an alarmingly fast rate, and he really wasn't. And he was really conscientious about his drumming and was feeling like he was struggling with the newer material that they were putting together for Nursery Crime. Should also be noted that at that time, Anthony Phillips decides to leave the band mainly for health reasons. He was having really bad stage fright, which apparently the other guys they didn't know. And Mike Rutherford and Ant Phillips were super, super tight, like best friends. And this really hit him hard. He struggled with it really badly. When he left, they decided to tour as a 4-piece. And they tried that for a little while after they found Phil Collins to replace John Mayhew. And Phil Collins was like a massive step up from John Mayhew, apparently.
Yeah.
And then they tried some touring with the 4 of them, and that didn't really pan out quite the way they felt that it should, because they were using Mike was playing a lot of the rhythm guitar and all the acoustic guitar, and Tony was doing the like lead parts on a fuzzed out organ.
Yeah.
Which is
And it was a good development for his skill, but it wasn't sustainable. I remember reading that.
Right.
Yeah.
And it probably wasn't, from a sound standpoint, to have every single lead sound exactly the same on a fuzzboxed Hammond organ sound probably was pretty intense too, because Hammond organs can be pretty in your face. So
yeah, definitely can.
So the story goes with Phil is that he was aware of this band, didn't know anything about their music, but was aware that they were looking for a drummer. And he had his manager get in touch, and he pretty much went in there, and more or less there were two other drummers before him, and they had devised these skill tests because John Mayhew had struggled with. I think the biggest problem with John Mayhew was that he wasn't able to adapt on the fly. He had to have everything. I need to know exactly what I'm playing, and I can't improv. They wanted somebody that could improv. And Phil had played in jazz bands. He had the full arsenal. And I kind of forgot what a really good drummer Phil Collins is. He's pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
So much style.
Yeah. And they got him in, and then I believe Steve Hackett saw an advert in a music magazine or in a music
opposite. Steve Hackett put out an ad seeking a band.
Was it that way?
It was the other way around, actually.
Oh,
okay, I missed that.
He was looking for a forward-seeking band. I don't remember the exact quote, but it was very odd that a musician put out an advert looking for a band.
Yeah, really.
Let me double check that, but yeah, I remember reading it.
I was thinking that he had seen an advert in I don't know the.
Hey, I could be wrong. Let me double check.
The London trade magazines or something like that, but I might have misread that somewhere. I'm not sure.
Oh, another interesting detail when Phil Collins was doing the audition. So he was hanging out in the pool beforehand. He was just listening to the drummers in the house behind, just in the pool, and he was with his bandmate in the band Phil Collins came from, the Flaming Youth. They're a guitar player. They were both just in the pool. And then basically they both auditioned, and they're like, okay, we want Collins. We don't want whatever his name is in the Flaming Youth because he just wasn't the right fit. And another interesting thing, too, is they knew immediately when Phil Collins walked into the room, he picked up the sticks and how he sat down on the drum stool. They're like, this guy knows what he's doing.
That's what Peter Gabriel said, yeah.
And as a drummer, I know exactly how that is because, I gigged a lot throughout college. That's how I basically paid for my college. And I would know when I had another band opening or we'd be opening for someone else, how good somebody was before they even played a note. Just how they sat on the kit and just their confidence. You could just sense it.
How about that? That's interesting. I read that. I think Peter Gabriel is the one that said that about Phil Collins, that Peter is a drummer as well.
Yeah.
And he's very percussion oriented and very tied in with drummers, hence why he's had some of the best drummers in the world drum for him on his solo material. But he said the way that Phil sat at the drum kit, I just knew this was going to be the guy. And he was, man. What he brought to the band was pretty consequential, I think.
Yeah.
Totally
you
agree.
Hear the difference right away. And that's not to say that drums on Trespass are bad. They're really not. They're actually quite good, but Phil's next level, and you can kind of hear it.
Doesn't this shakeup remind you so much of Marillion right after Script? This just
there was a lot about listening to Genesis that reminded me of Marillion. Especially, there's a note in here, especially the solo on Firth of Fifth. There's no way Steve Rothery didn't tailor make his tone almost completely off that solo. But that's how it happens. A lot of my playing when I play is very highly influenced by Alex Lifeson because he was the guy that made me want to pick up a guitar. So, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix, it happens. It just happens. There are guys. We're going to talk a little bit about Steve Hackett later too, because when we get into some of those middle albums, where I think he's probably one of the most underrated guitar players ever on the face of the planet. He does so many things very well, including tapping before Eddie Van Halen was around. So,
can I get you? I want to get you that quote.
Yeah,
specifically. So, where am I? In December, Gabriel spotted a Melody Maker advert from Steve Hackett, formerly of Quiet World, and Steve wanted to join a band of, quote, receptive musicians determined to drive beyond existing stagnant music forms. And then Gabriel basically told Hackett, become familiar with Trespass, and then attend this upcoming gig at the Lyceum Theater. And then Hackett auditioned with the group at their Earl's Court flat right afterwards, and Hackett and Rutherford became immediate friends, talking about inverted chords. So
Talking about what?
inverted chords, guitar chords.
Inverted chords.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, and I'll tell you, when you listen to the interviews of all these guys, the only guy that really comes off a little arrogant and pompous is Tony Banks. The other guys, even Collins, who's probably the richest one of all those guys by far. Man, I don't know. Peter Gabriel's probably pretty rich too. But, I mean, they're all rich. But as far as, like, who probably has the most wealth, I got to believe it's Collins. He comes off really well. Rutherford comes off well. Steve Hackett comes off like the nicest fucking dude on the planet.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
that's a guy I'd love to sit down and have a beer with and just talk music.
And I bet he'd
And-
probably welcome it.
I bet he would do it. I
Yeah.
bet he
Yep.
would do it. Yep. Okay, so where are we at here? Nursery Crime
Yes.
was released November 12th, 71. 71, yes. A couple notes on this. Obviously, first with Steve Hackett and Phil Collins. Collins' voice is used much more. Yeah, why don't we pull that up? Let me see.
Yeah, I just showed everybody a little bit. Which
Nice.
it has kind of a weird cutoff, so I don't know if that's how it originally is, if it's a game.
Yeah, I noticed on Trespass the same thing.
Yeah. So that might just be kind of a bad job with the CD reproduction. But
Which ones do you have? What label on?
so we got it's a Rhino reissue, Atlantic.
Yeah, what year?
2008. Almost all these are the 2007 and 8.
7 and 8. So those are the ones I have.
Yeah, they seem
The-
to be the most common.
I think that's the first ones they did the definitive remasters.
Here, I
for.
think this looks better. There we go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Which
Nice.
a little
like
bit of
that
a better album cover.
Yeah, it's probably my
I
favorite.
think that I think they botched it with the girl though, man. Like some of this is kind of heavy-handed painting, and like I don't know, it's almost like you either want her to be more attractive or more menacing. She's just too plain, I guess. That's just my critique, but there was something about her that always bothered me with the album cover.
Rick, to your point there, you're right. Phil Collins is rich, but his ex-wives have taken a huge chunk of his money. There's no doubt about that. He's had some strange luck with women, man. I'll tell you what. But you do when you're a very rich man like that, and you're a rock star. He hasn't helped himself by having some extramarital affairs and his alcohol issues and all that stuff. But yeah, he very, 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 very wealthy. I read that Phil Collins is the second richest drummer on the planet, behind one Ringo Starr, who I don't know who that guy is, but he must be good.
He does this a lot.
British.
He's another Brit
Brit.
drummer. All right, so a couple quick notes here. Collins' voice is used much more. He's used in a few one lead track, and he does a lot of. There's a lot of points on Nursery Crime. You hear Phil come in, and it's like, whoa, he sounds a lot like Peter Gabriel, which we'll talk about later. But he does, but he has a different timbre rather. His voice is a little higher. Peter Gabriel has that lower bassier sort of voice, but when they kind of hit the same notes when they're doing harmonies and things, you're like, whoa, those two guys are like super close. It's like
so well.
pretty trippy, and it works well, exactly. Because none of the other guys were great backup singers. Rutherford or Tony Banks weren't. Hackett doesn't sing, right?
No, Rutherford
right.
did some backing stuff like Watch of the Skies and shit.
Right.
But yeah.
They also started to use the Mellotron. Apparently, Steve Hackett said, "Hey, we got to get one of those," and Tony Banks bought one. And who did he buy it from?
King Crimson.
King
Yeah.
Crimson. That's right. It's also a lot heavier in Hammond use. Is much more prevalent. And let's see, what else do we have here? I noted, and Chuck wouldn't pick this out probably, but Lee, you might pick this out.
What?
There's a song title on Nursery Crime that Mike from Opeth nicked for Deliverance. You know what that is?
So Deliverance for Absent Friends.
You got it.
Oh, and that's the first solo vocal that Phil did.
Yep, exactly.
Genesis was on that song.
Let's see. Okay, so for me, real quick on this, the musical box, fantastic, tons of crazy ideas, a super prog song. If you know, like a prog song on steroids. You know, it's crazy. It's great. There's a lot of good stuff, but not my favorite. Fountain of Salmacis, another great epic. Love that intro. That intro is beautiful. It's very moody bluesish. It's very in the Court of Crimson King, obviously, because you got the Mellotron, and it's a great song the whole way through. But it's not my favorite song. For Absent Friends, really cool little ballady type, and it's short. It's only maybe minute and 50 or something like that. It's pretty short, right?
It doesn't say the track times.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's really short, but it really does showcase the fact that Phil Collins has a pretty good voice. And it's not my favorite song. Favorite song, Return of the Giant Hogweed. That fucking song rules. Yep. It is like, it's the metal song on the album. It's got that driving Hammond. It's got Gabriel just spitting the lyrics out at you. Killer track. The other songs, they're okay. They're not great. We've now moved from a 3 on Trespass up to 3.754 probably for me, somewhere in that range. It's not my favorite album. It's not. We're going to get to that soon, but it's a really good album. It's a solid album. It's one that I want to go back and re-listen to because I hadn't listened to it in a long time. And as soon as certain parts came up, I was like, oh, yeah, I remember this. But I will tell you, it's been probably a better part of 8-9 years since I've listened to that album. But it was cool. As I don't know if I think I told you, Lee, maybe I didn't, but both you guys, I literally spent from 11 o'clock this morning till about 7:30, 8 o'clock listening from Foxtrot through till Duke. Every album, every song, making copious fucking notes. And I enjoyed it. It was really killer to do. So, Lee, what you got on this?
Nice. A lot of it's very similar to what you had to say. The thing with the early Genesis is I don't grab for this or this because there's better versions of a similar thing, a progression of that. So I don't grab this one that often either. However, it is really good. Definitely better than Trespass. And a lot of it is the member change. I mean, we've talked about it, but Phil Collins, he has such a snap with his playing. Mm-hmm. And a good drummer lifts a band up and the band feels stable that they can then improvise and feel comfortable. Mayhew was a drummer that gets by and kind of tethers it down. He's not bad. It's just the band members don't have the stability to then be lifted up. And man, Collins just kills it. And then Steve Hackett, of course, just having such eloquent guitar lines, using tapping. I think on Return of the Giant Hogweed for sure. Yeah, at the beginning, which is such a great track. And I feel like it has a very similar kind of rolling, tumbling feel to The Knife, except now we got a better rhythm section and we got a better guitar player. So that's like
great points.
And then the song, obviously is better, but man, you got the right ingredients there. Man, I love that song. Really, my opinion is so similar to yours and the songs that really kick it up a notch. Musical Box, I think that's a really awesome song. It has that pastoral quality, but
the way it starts.
The dynamics are so good. Here it comes again, and then it just dips down and up, and man, takes you on a good journey, and you're in for it the whole time through. So I'd say 3.754 for me. Right. Good record. I actually do have a vinyl copy of this. I just remembered. I don't know where it is.
And the funny thing is that, I don't necessarily think a good prog song necessarily has to be 18 minutes long. If it's done right, you can do it in 7 or 8 minutes really, really well. And
that's true.
The Hogweed is a great example of that, and Salmacis is a pretty good example of that as well. I think the one thing to note on the Musical Box is there is, there's not a lot of repetition. And Tony Banks was big on that, where he wanted to, a lot of songwriters write, okay, here's the verse, here's the chorus, here's the verse, here's the chorus, here's the bridge, here's the chorus, here's the verse. And the repeated patterns throughout. The one thing Genesis did pretty well in that early material, whether it was for good or bad, was they didn't repeat a lot of motifs. And that was a tricky thing, because if you watch some of these documentaries, Tony Banks would think he was putting a solo in somewhere, and then Gabriel would sing over it. He'd come in and find some way to sneak words in, which is something I'm going to comment on soon. I've got a comment about that coming up. I'm not going to ruin it just yet. Not so much these songs, but it's coming. So, Chuck, what you got on Nursery Crime?
Well, unlike you two, I do enjoy Musical Box. I mean, that's probably my favorite tune off of it. And when I heard it, I was probably 17 or 18 years old, and I just kind of connected with the outro verses of Brush Back Your Hair, and talking about a woman in his life, or a woman, and I just kind of related to that for some reason. It just connected with me, and it stirred me a little bit. Fountain is my other song off of that one that I really like. I'm not really a big fan of Hogweed.
Well, fuck you.
But I just said that just so I can get that response from you, Jeff.
Exactly.
You really know that I like it. But no, again, it's the songs that I heard, the Musical Box and Fountain, I've heard before in live versions of them. So when I heard the studio version, it's like, who is this that's playing the song that I heard before?
Yeah.
So I kind of came in backwards, where I've heard the music live, and then I heard the studio stuff, and then it took me a while to adjust to the studio stuff.
Well, because they did quite a bit of improv live, and yeah, absolutely. They changed, they rearranged them a little bit. I'll get into that later on when we get into Selling England here. But yeah, the addition of Holland's as drumming kind of gives you an idea, an inkling of where his drumming is going to progress to later on. And then of course Hackett being in there, and Hackett is one of my favorite guitarists. That's right, you are a huge Hackett fan.
Yeah, I'll be seeing him in May this year.
And I really do contend he might be one of the top underrated guitar players in the history of rock music, period.
Yeah, I do have a friend that's a huge a huge Hackett fan, a huge Hackett hand.
Hackett hand.
Yeah, Hackett hand. And as far as he's concerned, Genesis didn't put a good album out after he left, after Wind and Weathering. So,
hot take.
So,
all right.
But again, the artwork also, in a different logo lettering style, which I think on this one I kind of like that. And so far, the best one, but not my favorite. Logo. Yeah. So,
I got the vinyl copy actually, Jeff.
Oh, do you? Okay.
This is literally the only vinyl I have in my apartment, so just.
It should be noted that I own every Genesis album from Trespass through, and then there were 3. I have all the CD remasters. Unfortunately, I could not locate them in my move. A lot of my stuff is it's in 3 different places in our new place. So, and my dad was sleeping when I went to go in there and get some stuff out of his closet. And I fear that's probably where it was at. But everybody else had the album, so we're good. Okay, so we're moving on here. I didn't really make any notes about like the tour from that album. Let's see. Foxtrot 10/6/72 was released in October 6th. And it should be noted that it was recorded in August of 72 and released in October. That is some quick ass turnaround. There are bands that are recording albums now a year, 2 years in advance of when they're actually coming out, which is crazy. So,
there was a time when bands would put out 2 albums in a year.
Yes.
In the 60s, early 70s.
And Genesis did that here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they did.
Well, the promotion machine of record companies was they were large scale stuff. Now record companies are tiny. Yeah, you have the ones I have, Lee. Those
Yeah.
are the, you want to talk about that one, Lee? Why don't you go ahead?
Sure. Man, what a huge step up. I feel like it's a band that's firing on all cylinders. They're used to working with each other. They have a lot of collective experience. And I don't think there's a weak track on here. Let me look here. I guess the only ones that don't really stick out to me here would be Can, Utility, and Coastliners. I can't even have the song. I don't even know the song in my head right now, but man.
Weirdly, same for me, weirdly.
Yeah, but Watcher of the Skies, what
Oh
an
my goodness.
awesome song and such a good album opener.
Oh yeah.
And man, you just want to you just want to play along with it. And man, it reminds me of the Rhythm and YYZ a lot.
Yeah, you're right. Oh my
But,
goodness, yes.
Man, what a great song. I just watched them perform it live earlier today. It was like a 73, so right around the Genesis Live record. And man, so good. Just so powerful. It has that stuttering beat, but then they do have the stomp in the verse.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Get 'Em Out by Friday. I love that song.
Great song.
That song rules.
Yep.
Really cool lyrics, really sticks in your head, really cool drum pattern, and I think it has a really good lyrical message too, about the commentary, Get 'Em Out by Friday. I think it's about people leasing, apartments and stuff.
Yeah,
and then genetic reassignment of human genes so that we can make people smaller and so we don't need as much space.
Wow,
That's what it's about.
So we can have lower ceilings, so we can get more tenants in the same space of the building.
Yeah.
And they use less natural resources too.
What a brilliant lyrical topic. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
And then it's also worth noting this is when Peter Gabriel pretty much goes full theatrical. I think this is really where a lot of the costumes started. I don't recall a lot of it being in Nursery Crime.
No, he didn't. He wore a dress and a fox head.
Yeah.
That red dress. He wore his wife's red dress and a fox head. And he mentioned that he took it out of his wife's wardrobe and it was some high-level fashion designer dress. He said, I saw an interview with him recently where he said, boy, I ruined the dress and it probably was worth way more than the money that we got for most of those gigs that now would be worth more as a collector's item.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And these guys are still so young when they're writing this.
Yeah.
You can tell there's that youthful wonder and ambition, but they finally have the chops to meet that ambition. And Supper's Ready. I mean, I could listen to that song every day and not get sick of it. I mean, it is such a classic. Every time I hear it, I find something different. Exactly what you were talking about earlier with the songs being a journey and not as much repeating chorus verse. I mean, this exemplifies that.
Absolutely.
Not a boring moment in that song.
26 minutes long?
22:58.
22:58.
But man, and dude, the damn I can't think of the word. Why am I blanking on it? The big keyboard that has all the rolling loops.
Mellotron.
The Mellotron on that track just transcends it.
Yeah. And what's the song? What's the one on there called something in 9/8?
Timetable?
Oh yeah, Apocalypse in 9/8.
Apocalypse in 9/8.
Yeah.
That is so cool. That section is so good, man.
Now, how does that part go? Because I just listened to the whole song. I never really.
It's the one that's da 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 da. It's almost like the Watcher of the Skies thing, but it's really frenetic. I mean, the whole track is, again, starts out very languid, very pastoral, very British, and the lyrics are done in, one of the things that Peter Gabriel did a lot, which is really quite, I think, fairly rare of a lyricist, is he wrote these songs that had multiple characters in that he personified through narrative. So he'd be Mrs. Jones or Mr. whatever. I mean, I forget the characters' names in the thing, and then he would adopt sometimes annoying British. Sometimes he would go overboard with the old Monty Python's Flying Circus type, vocals. But I can't think of many other people that were doing that at all, that were writing lyrics like that.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All right, Chuck. what you got on Foxtrot?
Well, to just further that point with Gabriel, inserting all these characters into his lyrics and then impersonating the voices during the song. It's the first one he did that with that brought it to the public's attention was Getting Them Out by Friday.
Yeah.
And another thing too that the band was starting to kind of separate them from other prog bands is the fact that they were having fun with the lyrics and they're being, they could have quirky themes through them, such as, being able to genetically reduce people to 4 feet tall so they can fit more of them inside of a rental building. When you think about it in 72, how serious the other prog bands were at the time. They're writing, if they're writing anything that was kind of outside the norm, it was more of fantasy, like Lord of the Rings, White Rider by Camel, for instance. And Genesis does that too. But they also do these quirky things.
More like surrealist.
Yeah. So, and I can't really think of any other bands off the top of my head that did that. I'm sure there are. But yeah, that intro to Watcher of the Skies, the Mellotron is just like one of my favorite instruments. It just, just grabs me by the heartstrings. And, if the band's playing it, I'm going to listen to it. Watch Those Skies has that in it. And then, in the sections of Supper's Ready, where it just is just like, my God, it's just like there's a whole gaggle of people out there singing in a choir.
It's very beautiful and very evocative.
It really is. It's just so unique. The sound is. The one thing that I've always, knew Supper's Ready as Supper's Ready. And then, going to Wikipedia, there's like, 5, 6, 9 different songs titles associated with Supper's Ready. So or 9 different passages. And I could probably identify 4 of them. So if I think too much about it, I overthink it and I just get confused. I love that song. And this is interesting because I first heard Supper Ready on Seconds Out, the live album. And that was the song I skipped over to get to the rest of the album. It's just side 3, Supper's Ready, forget that. No kidding. And then, my friends would, that had the same album, they would come in to, or we'd hook up whatever, and they would talk about it. And it's just like, oh, okay, I missed that, or I haven't really listened to it. I have to go back and listen to that. And granted, this is the time when I had in my catalog, I had Tales of Topographic Oceans, I had Relayer, and those 2 albums, they have, that's 5 sides that are just one song. And I just always thought it was such a, I had to put in some time to put aside so I can dedicate listening to these songs. And it just seemed like I didn't have the time, or it was too intimidating. It's like, I can't listen, I'm not worthy, but I got over that. And Supper Ready was definitely one of those songs that it just, it took me some time to get it, but I'm with you, Lee. It's like, I can listen to the song every day, get up, and that's the song I hear when I get out of bed, start my day. But I do like Can Utility and the Coastliners. And I think it was one of the songs I knew of that song. I heard that song several times. It was actually on a tape of the FM radio station. Again, talking about Stone Trek. I recorded a lot of those radio shows, and for years I had bands on there. I had no idea who it was. I had, Genesis songs on there. I knew who the band was, but I didn't know the name of the title of the song. I just knew the song. And then when I heard it on this album, it's like, oh, okay, put 2 and 2 together there. So, but that's always kind of been my favorite off of this, along with Watchers of the Sky.
Oh, of course.
Chuck, what would you give this out of 5?
Well, let me burn through some quick notes here. Agree with you, Lee, 100%. Watcher of the Skies, what a killer opener. Mm-hmm. And you're right. It's almost YYZ. Or I should say, YYZ is almost...
It's almost Watcher, yeah.
Yeah, because, Watcher was first. So good. Watcher of the Sky. So good. So good.
That little guitar flourish that Hackett does.
Mm-hmm. Which he's adept at doing those flourishes, as you said.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
kind of his little trademark, I think, throughout his playing career.
Just fits right in.
Get Him Out by Friday. Quirky, British, funny, interesting, weird, bizarre lyrics, which is not the first time for Peter Gabriel and won't be the last, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Horizons, which I think Hackett plays most of his acoustic shows, or most of his shows, actually. He usually plays that. Beautiful little acoustic tune that really shows how skillful he is and how tremendously underrated he is outside of Prog circles. You never see Steve Hackett's name in, these days at all, ever. I mean, you don't really see these polls much, but when you see like the top 100 guitar players, he rarely is in those things, and that I don't understand that at all. Supper's Ready, possibly the first big epic Prog suite, but probably the second, because you could argue that more than likely Close to the Edge was because it was first. It beat this out by 4 weeks, and you could definitely tell there was probably some kind of. I'm sure these guys were friends with the guys, and yes, clearly they were, because Bruford came and played drums for him later. And clearly they knew each other from the touring circuit, and I don't know if they ever toured together. I kind of doubt it, but maybe they did. I don't know. Maybe they played a Prog, festival or something somewhere, but I don't know. By the time they would have done that, though, Genesis wouldn't have really been a Prog band anymore.
Yeah. True.
But Supper's Ready, what a tour de force. And I will say this. What Chuck said about that song is kind of the way I've felt about it for a lot of years, because coming to it later, it felt like, man, I got to really invest a lot into this to figure this out, because I'd already done the Close to the Edge and the Gates of Delirium, and very tedious and difficult to get through Tales of Topographic Ocean. That's
we'll get to that in the other stream.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in the Yes deep dive. Supper's Ready is 22 minutes. Close to the Edge is 18 minutes, so they're pretty close there. It starts with languid acoustic stuff. There's some wackiness in the middle of it, and then you get that kind of conclusion that it comes to. It's just the interplay between Collins and Peter Gabriel's voices on that track is pretty impressive. There's some really neat interplay of their voices. And again, there are times I don't want to say I can't distinguish from one from the other, because I can, but there are times where if I was really a casual listener, I probably would have no idea. There's so much similarity. And I think Peter Gabriel explained it the best when he said, Phil and I have a lot of similar timbres, but Phil has that top end that I have to go to a falsetto that sounds raspy and doesn't have the sweetness that Phil has in this top range, and I have a little bit of an earthier, bassier tone at the low end. And if you listen that way, you can definitely distinguish who is who. But there's some great interplay vocally on this. A lot of people call this their greatest album. I'm not there.
No, I don't agree.
I like it a lot. I do. I probably give it a 3.75 or 4, but I probably wouldn't go above that. I like you, Lee. Can Utility and the Coastliners drifted right on by me. I couldn't tell you what it even sounds like, and it's been I'm just saying that's just how it worked. In fact, what are the other tracks on there? There's
So we got
Watcher of the Skies.
Timetable would be the other one we haven't talked about.
I don't even recall that one at all.
They kind of just drift through, and then the highs are Watcher, Get 'Em Out, according to Chuck, Can Utility and the Coastliners, and then Supper's Ready.
Yeah. So for me, it's a couple really standout tracks. One amazing track, two amazing tracks. I wouldn't say Get 'Em Out. I like it a lot, but I wouldn't say it's an amazing track on the level of Watcher or most of Supper's Ready. But it's good. But I would not say that it's, for me, their penultimate album. That's coming up.
Yeah.
So
agreed.
Well, let's do ratings for everybody else too, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think for me, I don't know. It's been the flavor of the week for me, man. I just seem to really want to keep listening to this one. I'd say it's a 4.75 for me. I love this record.
Wow.
And I think it's a huge step over the previous two.
Oh, it's a step up. So I'd probably go a strong 4. It's definitely a step up. It's just not. It's not where
I'll probably rate a lot of things high, but I just think this one's excellent.
I think you might find a couple of these that are coming up.
I guess we're talking relative. I'd say 4.5.
Okay,
that's probably fair.
There you go. What do you got, Chuck?
4. I'll give it a 4. Strong 4.
Cool. All right. So next, I want to make sure I didn't fuck this up. No, I didn't. Okay. Oh yeah, I did. Of course I did.
That's selling.
No, I got selling, but I don't have the release date. God damn it.
73.
Okay. Sometime in 1973, Selling England by the Pound comes out. And to this point, it became their highest charting US and UK album. For this album, it's interesting to note that Tony Banks got his first polyphonic synthesizer.
October 73.
October 73. See, again, another October.
Again, another late release.
Either October or November. Almost every one of their albums came out in those years, in those months. Again, pivotal to note that Tony Banks got his first polyphonic synthesizer, meaning polyphonic means you have multiple notes as opposed to, early synthesizers, you had to play one note. It was ding, 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 ding. Whereas polyphonic, you had actually pitch shifting. You had a lot more at your fingertips as far as sounds you could create and make. And you can definitely tell on this album. Lee, why don't you show us that album?
Sure.
And why don't you talk a little bit about it?
So, just basically picking up where Foxtrot left off. I mean, this is an awesome album. Keeping the tradition alive of a very strong opener. Dancing with the Moonlit Night. That's such a good song. I mean, it really just captures you right in. Has a really good intro, catches your interest. Tell me where my country lies. Like it feels like a British, maybe a little bit Northern Ireland kind of like drinking song. Like a kind of it's very British. Let's put it that way. It's like a British folk song almost. And then, man, when they kick in when the full band comes in, like so cool.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, whips everything into a shape. And man, I love how Phil plays there too, because he does the open hi-hat so well at the right spots to have like this really good impact. And Phil also can balance keeping the momentum going of a groove, but playing behind the beat, kind of like, not like Bonham in style, but the fact that they both kind of play a little bit behind the beat has a swing to it. And man, I just love that. Not a weak track on this album. Objectively, I mean, I bet I could say this is better than Foxtrot, but man, First to Fifth, The Battle of Epping Forest, really cool song. There's that one key part that has like a really interesting tone to it. It's almost like a stand-up old-timey type piano. That's like what he's saying, the Battle of Epping Forest, and then the little part in between.
Yeah, it's got like it's a harpsichord sound.
Oh, it's a harpsichord? Yeah.
I believe it is, yeah.
But it just has a really interesting tone to it. It doesn't have like a really big epic track like Foxtrot, but all the songs that are like of the 11-minute mark are awesome. Cinema Show, love that song.
Yeah.
Isle of Plenty is a good way of ending the album because it comes back to, if I remember right, it comes back to
Dancing with the Moonlight Night.
Yeah, like a little bit of the themes from that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Bookends it.
Yep, exactly. So great cohesive album. Step up in the album art direction.
Yeah, show the album art again closer.
I think it's a really cool album.
Yeah, I like
it reminds me of a really well illustrated children's book meets an impressionist painting.
Yeah, it's very bucolic.
Yeah, apparently
again, pastoral.
The artists on that didn't have time to paint the album cover. So I think it was a she. Don't know the artist's name.
I didn't write that
They
down.
took an existing painting and just added the lawnmower to it to tie in the lawnmower with the wardrobe song.
Oh yeah. Oh, and that was what their first like quote unquote hit.
That was their first.
Yeah,
Like,
that was their
in your
first
wardrobe.
chart. Yeah,
Yeah.
first venture in the top 30 in the UK charts.
That's a really interesting song. Like the beginning part is kind of weird. It's like there's like a narrated kind of thing from Gabriel, and then there's these weird kind of like jungle drums. Am I getting it mixed up? It's a little
Gabriel. Phil Collins got a talking drum made in Nigeria.
Yeah.
From the producer, I think, and so he was playing around with that, and he uses that in the intro. So you absolutely identified that.
Really cool album. I bet we're all gonna love it, but love to hear what you think, Chuck.
All right, Chuck.
Well, I don't know what you guys see in this album. I'm just gonna skip over it. No, this whole album is just, again, I heard, I still have the tape of that has the I Know What I Like in Your Wardrobe, and that the intro and the outro of that song has that weird vibration, humming, drony sound to it, as though it is a lawnmower that's off in the distance mowing your neighbor's yard across the block or whatever. And what that kind of caught my attention. And then on the tape that I have, it goes into Fallen Angel by King Crimson, and it almost sounds like it's the same band. But and then again, years later, I hear it for this album for the first time and go, "Oh, okay, that's that album, that's that song." But I believe that the band at this point, they did Supper's Ready, and they were consciously aware of not repeating a song again of that length, and so they just wanted to stay away from that, which they could have definitely done a long version with Cinema Show, or even Firth of Faith or Firth of Fifth, but they they were consciously aware, like I said, that they didn't want to have another long Supper's Ready that people would always go back and compare them. So, but again, I love the way that it opens with Moonlight Night, and just the tracks on this are just so good, and the haunting mellotron keys, and maybe it has something to do with that keyboard you're talking about, Jeff. That just fills in these haunting melodies that just stay in my head for days, and it just echoes and rattles around in the empty spaces between my ears. It's just so wonderful.
That's a lot of empty space. I'm sure it goes on for months.
Well, I do have a melon head.
You set yourself up for that, man. Come
Oh,
on.
yeah, of course. I know my fellow
Panel members
here exactly. So, but yeah, so Phil Collins, I think he starts exploring, I think, the different drums that are out there. I don't think it's this album. I think it's the next. No, I think it might have been this album that he attended saw Yes performing live, and came in with the idea that he had to kind of up his drumming technique on some of these songs, and so yeah, he was definitely influenced by Yes. And I went back and like, this was 73. Who was playing drums for Yes in 73? It was probably Bruford before Alan White, or if it was Alan White, Bruford was still kind of with the band.
Yeah.
On the outs, maybe at that point, or just at the beginning. So, which would kind of explain why Bruford joined him later on to tour with him.
Yeah, he toured for him for Trick of the Tail, I believe, right?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, I mean, oh, you're talking about the polyphonic synth. Is that what you're talking about? Oh,
yeah.
Okay, gotcha. All right. I was trying to think what you were trying to. I was struggling with that one. Talk about empty space.
You brought it up.
So, let's see. Again, another great lead-off track with Dancing with the Moonlight Night. Be nice if I could read my own fucking writing.
The mellotron in that track's awesome too. When it kind of like breaks open, because it's like a choral kind of mellotron, right? Like that tone that he's using in that track. Yeah.
Yep. And you know what? To tie it into metal, this is Genesis' black metal song.
Really?
Listen to the beginning of that, and listen to that almost tremolo sort of pick thing. It's not tremolo. It's just fast pick, the gallop of it.
Yeah.
Very black metal-y, man. Let's do it. This may be first proto black metal right here with Genesis. But no, when I was listening to it, I was like, man, that sounds like if you change this and that and threw some buzzsaw guitar and HM2 on there, it would be fucking classic black metal song, man.
You know our audience.
Yes, I do.
He's just trying to keep their attention in, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's just
Chuck started talking about mellotrons. Like, what the fuck
trilled.
is that?
It's trilled guitar playing. It's not tremolo.
Tremolo picking.
Yeah.
Also on this album, they had just toured Foxtrot in the U.S. and they came back, and Gabriel was just didn't want to have the band appear like they were selling out to the U.S. audience,
right,
to his U.K. audience. So he wanted to write songs, which is, I think, in the end, he came up with a lot of British sounding songs or songs about British life. There's a lot of references to, department stores or grocery stores and stamps and stuff that are found in Britain. So he was definitely aware of that. He wanted to keep that audience and not be the sellout that bands were.
Is Epping Forest a real place, or is it a fantasy type reference?
No, it's a real place. Apparently it was there was some sort of gang activity at the time in that area, and it may not have been in Epping Forest, but in London, I guess. So he made up a couple of band or gang names, and so it's fiction based on a true event.
Okay,
very cool.
That I didn't know. So I Know What I Like, which was technically their first hit, if you will. Very tongue-in-cheek, very over the top. The lyrics are, they're corny. I will say the one thing about Peter Gabriel's lyrics, though, a lot of people go on about his lyrics. He's such a great lyricist and stuff, and I do read a lot of his stuff is pretty evocative and interesting, but a lot of times I find myself confused by what he's writing. In that it's like, is Peter the only one that really understands what this is about? Like, there's just a lot of really esoteric stuff in there that sometimes just sounds a little bit like mumbo jumbo that he's creating. That's all I'll say on that. I'm not dissing him or shitting on him. I'm just saying that sometimes he gets this mystical shaman, thought process by people that hardcore Genesis fans. Oh, Peter Gabriel's lyrics. Oh my God, man.
Yeah. I see what you mean.
And I look at it more like sometimes he was just taking the piss. He definitely has a sense of humor.
Yeah. And again, they're quirky lyrics, oddball subject matter, all evident in I Know What I Like. But I will say that that mantra, that chorus became my mantra in like 78, 79 with my friends. We go camping, and we knew what we liked, and we liked what we knew, and that and the Carpet Crawlers, which we'll get into later.
Oh, yeah.
So I think my other pointer said I feel sometimes like he needlessly shoved a lot of words into empty spaces because he felt he had to, and I think that plays into that kind of not rivalry, but that whatever was going on between him and Banks. There was definitely a rivalry for who the leader was, and musically, Banks was the leader because he was the most prolific songwriter and the best, probably overall musician as far as composition. He was the guy, but PG was more the ideas guy and the concept guy, and then the front of the band,
press guy. The press guy was obsessed with
so I think that sometimes Peter, if you watch some of these interviews, you'll see Tony Banks talking about, he's like, I had this really great solo idea, blah, blah, blah. And the next thing I knew, he'd be like, oh shit, he's He's singing over it again.
He's singing it over. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he said that numerous times in several. So that's still a point with him, or at least when these interviews were done in 07 or 08, that was still a sticking point for him. It was a. You could just tell it wasn't animus, it wasn't anger, but it was just like that's how I'd make a song longer and put more keyboard solos in it to get to Pete, and Pete would throw more fucking lyrics on top of them, and that's my whole thing with Pete. He would throw these sort of what do I have here? I said I really respect Gabriel's vocal prowess, but the lyrical stuff is sometimes a bit of a mess. That's kind of I really felt that way, seriously, in some of it. Firth of Fifth, that's a big epic ballad. It's a super ballad, I would call it, on steroids. Has this killer Hackett solo in it. So evocative.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So beautiful and so the thing I really like about Hackett is he's very appreciative of space in a solo. He's not Yngwie Malmsteen, in other words. He doesn't need to fill every moment with some note that is to prove chops, because he's got chops. I mean, he's not Joe Satriani, but he doesn't need to be in these songs. And as I mentioned, there's no way that Steve Rothery from Marillion didn't cop a lot of his sound and the way he writes his solos for songs from Steve Hackett. There's no doubt. Battle of Epping. Battle of Epping Forest. Next big prog number. It's a good proggy track. Although Peter Gabriel's kind of weird vocalizations towards the middle and end get a little bit, the Monty Python-esque stuff is... Yeah,
again with the, assuming the character voices during the song.
In this track, it doesn't work like it does in I Know What I Like or Harold the Barrel, which I don't like that song, by the way. Yeah. We didn't mention that. I do not like that song.
That's why we didn't mention it.
The reason I don't like it in this song is this is a pretty serious ballad, and then it gets a little wonky with weirdness with him doing the weird vocalizations. But I still like the song. And you can tell it's, Genesis was always theatrical and very British and pretty humor laden, a lot of their stuff. But in this one, it kind of deters from the music a little bit for me. What's the next one? What's the instrumental called there? Can't even read my
After the Ordeal.
Yeah, that's it. After the Ordeal. That's a nice little instrumental, and then you get to the cinema show, and that's the big epic on there. And I mean, that's probably other than Firth of Fifth, that's probably my favorite song on there. Very acoustic, nostalgic, very light and haunting. Then it accelerates into that crazy sort of heavy finish. What else do we got here? Again,
Art Pro soloist apparently is what Banks used on that.
That's it, Art Pro. Yep.
It says right here in my notes.
I can't read my notes. This is terrible. I can't read my own fucking writing. Yeah, again, Cinema Show and Epping, Firth of Fifth are my two favorite songs. Okay, so next up, we're going to jump to The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. What you got there, Lee?
I got the two-discer, so of course that's how it's intended. So this is a Hypnosis cover, right?
That's the first one from Hypnosis, yep.
Yes, and love the Art Deco Genesis on that.
Yeah. Oh, the
logo
of the name. Yeah. The logo.
Super cool cover.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Oh, that cover just blew. That's an album I would buy it for the cover.
Yeah. Classic.
And I mean, it's their big concept album, the rock opera, so to speak, and it's also the last with Peter Gabriel, which we'll talk a little bit about. They also played this album in its entirety during the 74-75 U.S. Euro tour. What's your thoughts on this one, Lee?
Yeah. Did you want to tackle more of the history or just go right to opinions? Yeah, you can do it when you go.
Well, I mean, okay, real quick. I'll just talk over it real fast. This tensions between Peter Gabriel and the band were kind of mounting even during the recording of this album. Peter Gabriel came to the band with this story. He wanted to basically do this narrative a concept album about this young Puerto Rican man in New York City named Rael,
Yeah.
Raul, and
None of us got it right.
his journey through his early period of life on the road of discovery of himself, and then all these characters and episodes and songs kind of are different vignettes and either dreams or quote unquote real life experiences that he had during this sequence. Most of it's a dream, I believe it seems to be. I honestly don't know the story super well. I kind of read what I read, but the guy goes through all kind of phases of strangeness and oddities, and ends up having sex with female snake people, and then becomes a strange slipperman guy. And the way that he can come back to being a normal human being is to have his penis taken off and to wear it as a necklace. And God knows all of us guys really just want to wear our penis as a necklace.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
I can
true.
resonate with that.
That's what we do. I totally get down with that. So,
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I know the girls I date want me to. But
all two of them. But anyway,
that's right.
But yeah, I mean, it's a very bizarre story, and I do not own. I have the CD. I never read the narrative. I think the narrative is on the story, I believe.
It's on the vinyl
or
for
on the
sure. It's,
right on the album.
The Peter Gabriel wrote the story on the.
The whole thing's in here.
Right.
Yeah,
oh, it is in there. Okay.
Yeah, and
never read it.
He talks about there. I think he starts off, get your fingers out of my eye. I like to see the butterflies on the wall. It's like, right. And he goes on to say how everybody likes to have a rhyme, and puts 3 or 4 words together that rhyme, and it comes out in some of the songs on the album as well. But I have to say, when I listened to the vinyl and I read that story, thank God it was a double vinyl set, because that's how long it took for me to read it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was at a diagonal on the album. So you had, we're started in a corner, and then it went all the way through. So you have these sentences that were just like, 8 inches wide.
Holy shit.
And then, so it filled in the background of what was going on throughout the album and throughout the tracks. And that take about the having sex with those snakes, the lamia, is not what I got from that. I'm surprised that a lot of people felt that he had sex with those creatures. It was, my understanding, was more of a kind of recovery or a therapeutic physical therapy, if you will. But anyways.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. They suck his blood, though, don't they?
They die as a result of drinking
his blood.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I mean, at the end, he sees himself floating down a river, and he climbs out. He sees a window that he can escape this maniacal dream, but he sees his brother struggling to get out, and he goes to pull him out of the river. And his brother had been dissing him the entire trip and ignoring him and leaving him alone, and which he couldn't understand. And then he goes to turn him over, and it's him. So it's this journey of self-discovery. All along, it was me. Really esoteric, pretty intense. I got to be honest with you. It was a hell of a lot easier, in my opinion, to follow the guy in 2112, and I liked it better, to be honest with you. But
yeah.
I mean, it seems like Peter was doing some really good drugs at this point in time. Yeah. I'm just speculating, but I get it. It's he's an erudite, intelligent guy, but that's a lot of work to put in. That said, I'll tell you what I think of this album shortly. So go ahead, Lee. Tell me what you think of it.
Well, I have a couple things to add to what you guys are saying too. So the lyrical themes, it was crazy. I was watching this really good YouTube video about kind of the inspiration behind this album, and then a little more context. But after a New York gig, so this was like really late at night, midnight or so, Gabriel walks, out of the venue, kind of, goes a couple blocks, and he goes like this cinema like club, and he watches this movie called El Topo. Have you guys heard about this?
No. So
it's this avant-garde Western film, and they showed some clips of it in this YouTube little mini documentary. And dude, like literally everything you everything you guys are talking about with like a little bit of the sexual themes and then some weird, like just odd things happening, like it happened in this movie. So I'm not saying he plagiarized the movie, but he took a lot from it.
Wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, and like this movie is very weird from what I could tell. But yeah, and then he was walking, across Broadway to go to the film, so he just kind of took his actual experience of getting to that film, and then him actually watching it, like 2 a.m., and then that's what really birthed the whole thing. And it was, it's kind of pretentious, frankly, but I like to just listen to this album with just my imagination and not really hearing everything that he's talking about. I kind of just, allowed it to be a surrealist kind of dream thing. And I think I might enjoy it a little more that way, actually, the less I know about it. And then the tensions also were exacerbated by the fact that he was about to have his first child. So his wife was pregnant during all of these sessions. And she was having a really bad pregnancy. And I think Gabriel was recording a film score for a film that just got shelved.
Yeah,
so it was just like all over the place.
Yeah, it was William Friedkin. He was supposed to do who did The Exorcist and Sorcerer, and Friedkin was huge. What's the Gene Hackman, Roy Scheider movie? God damn it, my favorite movie, French Connection. So this was Peter Gabriel was starting to be courted by Hollywood a little bit to do, and you're right, it got shelved. It didn't end up going down, but you're right. He had something. He wasn't close to the studio, so he was traveling back and forth, and he was then kind of, because the concept was his, he insisted on writing all the lyrics, and he wasn't necessarily keeping up with the band as far as the music that was coming out, because they were doing a lot of ensemble jamming.
Yeah, I heard he was in like the level above and just listening to like the muffled quality of the music and then writing the lyrics, and then he'd come downstairs and like present to the band, which is
kind of nuts when you think about it.
In the chat, Human Falafel is familiar with that El Topo film I was talking about, so he knows more than me, but that's pretty cool that he's seen it.
Yeah,
it's a psychedelic Western. I've never heard of that.
It seemed really weird and interesting. But yeah, in terms of the actual music, I mean, man, this thing is so awesome. Lamb Lights Down on Broadway. I mean, such a good intro. Amazing keyboards by Tony Banks there. I would love to see a band cover that live. Like, I see like cover bands here and there, like playing songs, and it's always the easy stuff.
I could swear
like
that
Tom Petty or something.
Yeah, I could swear that actually has been covered.
It has.
Yeah,
it has. I've seen it.
I just think it would be so cool just to like go to like a bar and you're just kind of hanging out, and all of a sudden.
Oh, you mean that way?
Yeah.
You mean a non-professional? Like, I got you.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very challenging song. I just think
for sure.
It would be really cool to just have somebody just whip it out one day, like, and surprise you. Because, Chuck, you're in the jam scene. You know how even the bigger bands, they cover stuff, but they usually want to whip out something like that.
That sounds like
true.
Am I wrong? Did Fish cover that?
They may have.
I'm thinking they did.
Interesting to watch. I think Humphrey's covering it would be pretty sick, but
Humphreys would be something. Humphreys would be badass too.
Yeah.
Because I mean, those are two of the very best at doing that stuff.
Oh God, yeah.
And top shelf musicians, man. So okay, so what else you got on that? Because we kind of jumped in there.
Oh, totally. Man, I mean, they're just amazing songs, and it's definitely a full, album. When I listen to it, to be honest with you, I'll listen to the full disc 1. And then if I have the time, I'll listen to full disc 1 and 2. But I'll definitely listen all the way to the first disc. Carpet Crawlers, amazing vocal harmonies. Love the drum beat. And it just floats. And, man, you just want to sing along with it. Love the song Back in New York City. I love the energy in that.
It's a jamming track, man.
Really love that freaking guitar tone and part at the beginning of Fly on a Windshield.
Oh, I love that. That's my favorite song.
Like, God, it's powerful.
Dark and dank and claustrophobic, man.
Yeah. I like the charm of Grand Parade of Lifeless Packaging. I don't think it's like a good standalone song, but it's a good album song.
Mm-hmm.
The second side is more atmosphere than substance, in my opinion.
I agree.
It's still very good. I like how the album wraps up with The Light Lies Down on Broadway. But, Yeah, it's one where it's harder to pick out the standout tracks, but the ones I mentioned would be the ones that really stick with me there. Carpet Crawlers, like if I just want a single to pick off the album, I go to Back New York City and then Carpet Crawlers, and if I had time, I do Lamb Lies on Broadway. So that's like if I had 8 minutes to burn or so. Those are the songs I'd pick. But man, cohesive album, meant to be all the way through. And
You know, we were rating these albums and we didn't rate Selling, did we?
no,
We
we
didn't.
didn't.
All right, so
I'll
give
tackle
me a rating
Selling.
on Selling.
So I gave Foxtrot 4.5. I would give Selling England a 4.6. So I think it's a little better, but I think they're in the same ballpark.
All right.
And
What
then
do you What do you give Lamb?
Lamb 4.8. Yeah, maybe
you and
5.
I
mean,
thinking
it's 5.
very much alike, dude.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, the best songs. Well, maybe not, but the best. I mean, it's just the best cohesive album. Like so mature.
Chuck, what do you have to say about this album?
You know what you were saying earlier about Genesis being a keyboard-driven band by Banks rings so true in Lamb Lies Down album. I mean, it is so keyboard-dominated as far as the solos go, and I mean, In the Cage, that solo there.
Mm-hmm.
The Waiting Room.
Cool song.
Yeah.
Here Comes the Supernatural, Enthusiast, the Silent Sorrow and Empty Boats, the Colony of Slipperman, the keyboard solo in that, the Ravine, or Into the Scree. I mean, my God, it's just that's what captured my imagination as a teenager was keyboards. It wasn't guitars back then for me, and I think it was because bands like Emerson, Lake and Palmer that I listened to a lot, and I really, really rate Banks as one of the better keyboard players in the prog scene for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, it's Wakeman, Emerson, and Banks in my book. So, but yeah, the first time I heard this album is in spring of '78. I was, like I said, I was living with these two brothers. I didn't really know them. You know, I had met them and they were looking for roommates. I was available and I moved in with them that spring. And some Saturday afternoon, one of them came to me and he had some sugar cubes. Said, "Hey, eat one of these." And hey, have you ever heard this album? And put on Lamb Lies Down, and it just blew my mind.
Man,
So
that'd been awesome.
Hairless Heart, that solo that Hackett does in that is just fucking fantastic. I just love that. And then again, the silly lyrics, counting out time. You know, guy's going to get the book, know all the erogenous zones, and he's going to use the book and apply it in real life, and it fails. But yeah, the concept behind it was something that I've always, kind of adhered to because I read the whole story. I read the whole liner notes. And it's like, because I did that, I understood, I thought in my head the way the album, what it meant. But going back and listening to the whole thing just this afternoon, it was just like, what a treat this album is just to listen to it without even knowing this, with that whole story. You don't have to know what Gabriel had come up with the concept in this. You do kind of know that they all tie in together if you're just a casual listener, but there is so many strong points in this album as far as the musicianship and the drumming on this.
Oh yeah.
Collins just raises his skill level on this album, and I think it was this album, or maybe it's the next one, but I'll save it for the next one. But yeah, this is a great album, one of my faves. That's
What would you rate it on a 5 scale?
4.75.
Okay. Oops. Sorry. We forgot to mention one thing. There was the first live album was put out in 1973. Do you have that, Lee? I have that.
I don't have either
have that
live
album.
album.
I can't even remember what's on it, and I don't usually pay attention much to live albums in
I can pull
these
it up.
in these discographies. You can maybe check.
I know
give us-
Watcher's on it.
Yeah, I think it's after Foxtrot they did that, right? Or no?
Yep, right after.
73, yeah. And
Selling wasn't out yet.
Okay.
I remember the cover. It's got Gabriel in some sort of headdress and
Yeah.
blue
Kind of
lights.
vampiric looking.
Yeah, and he's got a
What
bass
songs
drum.
are on it,
and
Lee?
We got Watcher, Get 'Em Out, by Friday, Return of the Giant Hogweed, Musical Box, and The Knife. So yeah, all like the early hits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really good track list.
Okay, so for me, on Lamb Lies Down. We talked about the concept and all that stuff. Talked about being the last with Gabriel. Man, yeah, this is my favorite album by them by pretty wide margin. And you know why? It's probably their least proggy overall, and by that I mean you don't have a lot of long. I think there's 2 tracks that are long, like Colony of Slipperman's like 8 minutes, and the other times on there, Lee, on your CD.
No, they actually aren't. But it's a lot of shorter tracks.
It's
right.
a lot of vignettes, and then there's a lot of songs in that 4 to 5 minute range that are just really good songs. For example, opening track, Lamb Lies Down, just an amazing track. The Fly, Fly in the Windshield, right?
Yeah.
Man, I love that song. That's like their heavy metal song on the album. It's like dark and ominous and fucking and menacing, man. It's menacing, and it's one thing that Steve Hackett said about this album that I saw recently today in an interview he did was that he didn't really like this album a lot as it was unfolding. He wasn't sold on it. He didn't love the concept. He didn't love the length of it. Felt it would have been a better single album, which everybody says that about double albums usually. It would have been a better single album.
There's always one band member who says that.
Right, always. And that's the guy that probably didn't get all the songs on,
Oh, the guy that's guitar was turned down during the recordings or during the after the release.
Right, and his guitar isn't uber prominent on here, like you noted.
No,
Chuck.
it isn't.
It's a lot of keyboard, but the guitar that he does do is impressive, and it's very effective and very good.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing to note was that Brian Eno was recording what's the Tiger album, taking
Tiger Mountain.
Tiger Mountain, I believe, during
Mm-hmm.
this, and at the same time in the same studio, and Peter Gabriel had him. They were friends, of course, and Peter Gabriel had him come over and enosify some of his vocal passages. So you do notice several songs on here that have a lot of vocal effects that are kind of new. Fly. To me, Fly reminds me quite a bit of Kashmir from Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, that guitar tone. Yeah.
Yep. And this album sounds very different than Selling England. And the reason it does is because, well, it kind of sounds more Americanized and frankly, it sounds a lot more hard rocky in a way. There's more of a rock edge to it, even though it's still keyboard dominated. It just sounds less pastoral. It sounds darker. It sounds more, as I started to say.
Even the settings in America.
Well, sure.
Yeah, well, that's true. And then the references of
all American,
the KKK and Howard Hughes, and so
forth. The thing that Hackett said, though, and I agree with it completely, is this album feels claustrophobic at times. It feels like you're trying to get out when you're listening to it. Like, for me, it did. But I really relished being in there, if that makes any sense. It's like, all right, this is too good. I want to hear what's coming up next. I should get out, but I really want to hear what's coming next. And, I hadn't listened to this in a long time. And I really got to be honest, when I started researching it before I even started listening, I was like, am I misremembering how good this was? Am I just kind of going with the whole, this is one of the greatest concept albums ever made? Okay, let me find out. And then I started, I was like, no, this is fucking great, man. This is really good. And frankly, again, it's my favorite Genesis album pretty easily. A couple other quick notes. By the way, the concept, according to Phil Collins, is that it's about split personalities, which, if you do dig into the lyrics and pay attention to some of them, kind of makes sense. Cuckoo, what's it called?
Cuckoo Cocoon?
Cuckoo Cocoon, yeah. I wrote Cuckoo.
No,
I wrote Cuckoo. Cuckoo Cocoon, great song. Grand Parade of Endless Packaging. Great way to put it, man. It's probably not great as a standalone, but it's like one of those connective tissue tracks on the wall that it wouldn't be the same without it. And it's pretty menacingly weird, that song.
Well, it's also a commentary about just senseless, mindless consumerism.
Yep.
Lifeless packaging.
Absolutely. Back in New York City, I really like Gabriel's voice on this one, man, because he gets pretty vicious and angry. Hairless Heart's a really nice ballad, and like you said, Chuck has a great solo on it. I really fucking hate Counting Out Time. I hate that song. Fucking hate it, man. It's just
the more I hear it, the less I like it for certain.
I just don't like that song. I don't know why. Let's see what else. I say right here, the first of many Collins hits that suck. Carpet Crawler is fantastic. One of my standout tracks, Lily White Lilith. I love that song, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a big rock tune on the album. It's got a okay. What do we got here? Supernatural. No. The Waiting Room. Very cool Floydian spacey track.
Yeah.
Really dig that one. Supernatural. So I know you like that one, Chuck. Supernatural Anesthetist is a cool, rocking, menacing song.
A great instrumental out of that too.
And then there's some really cool, weird ambient stuff like the Waiting Room. And what's the one before that?
Well, right before it is Lily White Lilith.
No, what's the one after the Waiting Room then?
Anyway.
Yeah, Anyway. Because I think the Anyway is that's an instrumental, right?
What's the one that has like the cat noises and it's like a weird portal kind of sound?
I think that's the one. I thought that was the one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool little segue.
And then Colony of Slipperman, totally weird, man. Totally fucking weird.
Yeah.
I love it. According to Steve Hackett, the tour incurred large debts in estimated in why can't I read my writing? Fuck. Over an estimated £220,000. That's a lot of money back then.
Oh, yeah.
No kidding, yeah.
Hackett also cut a tendon in his, I believe, his right hand because he was getting kind of frustrated with his role in the band to an extent, and he crushed a wine glass, and they had to postpone several pretty prominent dates on that tour, and they took a bath financially on it. Also, very, very hugely theatrical from Peter Gabriel with the sets and the lighting and all that stuff, and the press tended to pay a lot of attention to that, and it really irritated the other band members, all of them.
They said Gabriel or Collins was quoted after touring Lamb Lies Down that the fans would walk past all the band members to get to
Peter Gabriel
and just tell him how great the show was.
Exactly.
It was like he was the only one on the stage, and so all the other members were aware of that.
Yep. A couple of quick notes here. Lamia is a really cool proggy dark epic or eerie epic. Colony of Slipperman I talked about. Let's see. In November of '74 at the Cleveland show, Peter Gabriel told the band he was leaving. It was kept secret from the press until the end of the tour. He was disillusioned. Allegedly, he was disillusioned with the music industry. He wanted to spend time with his family. I think the latter part is true.
Yep.
I don't think the former part is true. I think he was already aiming to go solo, and that the disagreements with Tony were becoming pretty difficult and pretty intense between those two. I think that it's my favorite album by far as a whole. I think that individually, some of the tracks are really good individually, but some of them, like you mentioned, Lee, work in the context of the album. And to me, I would probably really want to listen to this, as you noted, Lee, in succession. I don't think I'd want to start. It's an album I noticed I don't think I'd want to bounce tracks except for the one Phil Collins track there, Counting Out Time.
That's a
and like I did say, unlike say 2112, trying to follow the story is probably a little more than Chuck, I give you a lot of kudos for really digging in deep. I think I'm too old and too tired to try and follow a story like that now most of the time. But it's very ambitious as a whole, and it's a super solid record. The biggest thing I note on this album, and I said it once before, is that there was a lot less overt involvement of Hackett, and that's not a good thing, as we're going to see.
And if I can add, it's the only album, and I dare you to find another song, any song out there that uses stalagmites and
Stalactites, yeah.
in the same verse.
Yeah.
And do it well.
I got a couple pictures if you want to see, Jeff.
Oh, cool.
Here's one. No, just 2 pictures. It'll take a second. Here's a picture from Selling England from the Pound, but look at this vest that he's wearing. It's like made of pounds. I thought that was really weird and interesting. And
like
then,
real pounds?
Probably, yeah. Maybe not. I don't know. And then here's was a Slipperman costume, right?
It's a Slipperman right there, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I figured that was worth bringing up.
Where he crawls out from a penis tube, apparently, live.
That's before the penis tube, Jeff.
Is it?
It's what he would turn into if he didn't get castrated.
Dick chopped off.
Yeah. I have to add that costume was used, as well as all the other costumes from the Lamb Lies Down tour that Gabriel wore, was used by the cover band Musical Box.
Oh, really?
And they toured and played the entire Lamb Lies Down album. And then the encore was Musical Box.
Did you see him?
I did see him, yes.
Okay.
So
where are they from? Where are those guys from? Do you know?
They're in North America.
All over?
I don't know. I don't know. But they had, I mean, it was the complete immersion into a Genesis experience without having Genesis on the stage. They had all this slideshow that was used in that tour, the costumes, and even the band members. You know, the guy that was the lead guitarist sat on a stool, had the thick horn glasses on. It was like, you know, that's how Hackett looked back in '75.
No, you're right. He did wear those glasses. That's right.
Yeah, and he performed while sitting on the stool. So, yeah, that was kind of cool to see that they were able to get permission to use all those artifacts. You know.
Okay, so we are up through. We're at A Trick of the Tail. So that means we've got Wind and Wuthering. What else do we have left here, Lee?
And then there were 3, and then Duke. So we're a little past halfway through.
Okay, are you doing okay time-wise?
Yeah, I think we're progressing well.
Okay, cool. Trick of the Tail, February of '76. I don't actually have a date on this one for some reason. I just saw
it was, I think, March of '76.
No, it says February here for me.
Well, it was February of '76 then.
Okay. I just didn't have the actual date. Wikipedia said February of '76. At this point now, Peter Gabriel is gone, and a lot of the press, hold on. A lot of the press is saying, how are you going to replace that guy? How is Genesis possibly going to carry on without Peter Gabriel? And, well, they did, and they did pretty well. I think Collins tries to emulate Peter Gabriel quite a bit on here, but I think he does a pretty damn good job of it, actually. And, you know, if you were a novice to this band and maybe you heard a couple of tunes, prior to Peter Gabriel leaving, and then you heard this album, you may really not know, if you weren't like a diehard Genesis fan from the beginning, you might not know that that's not Peter Gabriel singing.
That's so true. That is so true.
We all would, because we came at it knowing he wasn't there. But I'm serious. Like, listening to this, if I didn't know he wasn't there, I don't think I would have known. And a quick story here. When I learned of Genesis, it was with Collins as the lead vocalist, right? And it was, you know, again, as I said, it was 78, 79, 80, somewhere in that range when I heard it, Follow You, Follow Me. Which, right after that is when Phil Collins exploded, man. Like, he was everywhere. After Face Value came out and Something in the Air at Night, it was Miami Vice, and it was TV appearances, and it was interviews on American radio and American TV, and MTV explodes, and Phil Collins is everywhere.
Yeah, did a song for the movie.
I never would have known that Peter Gabriel existed, and the reason I say that, as the Genesis original singer, because when Peter Gabriel explodes around that time with So, I think, now, hold on. I'm lying a little bit. I knew about Peter Gabriel because the first song I heard of Peter Gabriel's was Games Without Frontiers, which I think was on his third solo album, right?
It was, yeah.
Okay. So I didn't know about him on the first two. I didn't know about him. Yeah, I didn't know about Salisbury Hill. I didn't know those songs until after I heard Games Without Frontier. I remember very distinctly what I was doing. I was getting high, smoking a doob with a couple buddies, and Games Without Frontier came on the radio, and I'm like, whoa, listen to that,
Sweet
man.
song.
And I remember somebody going, dude, that's fucking Peter Gabriel, man. I'm like, okay, whoever that is. I did not know. I didn't know who Peter Gabriel was. And I knew a lot about Prog and a lot about music, but yes, I did not know Peter Gabriel was the OG singer of Genesis. So what I'm getting at is that, tying into Trick of the Tail, if you didn't know much about the band's history prior to 75, 76, you wouldn't have known who Peter Gabriel is, because Phil Collins does a hell of a job. And I forgot how good his voice, as much as I hate 80s onward Phil Collins, and I hate fucking virtually everything he did as a solo artist, and I hated, and he's a nice enough chap, don't get me wrong, he's probably a good dude, but I just don't like his music, and I fucking hate the Genesis, as we know, or I'm going to say soon, or I'm going to say now, everything after Duke, I just fuck it. There's 4 songs I found on all those albums that I like, but the thing is, Phil Collins does a pretty masterful job on Trick of the Tail, Wind of the Wuthering, and then there were 3.
Yeah,
it's pretty amazing.
Totally agree.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Real quick notes. There's the thing that you note with Trick of the Tail is a fair amount of shorter songs, a fair amount of more streamlined compositions. Yes, there's still a couple of proggy songs, but you can tell the groundwork for the transition has been laid. It's starting to occur. I wouldn't exactly say that they were pop band at this point, but one thing that has to be noted is that unlike most of the other prog bands, Genesis was always a band that could kind of write a pop tune. They had a poppiness to their songs, and it became very evident on this album, in my opinion. Okay, so Lee, why don't you give us your opinion, and I'll wrap up at the end then.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of comment on your comment about Collins as well. Like, it's not really fair to just be like, when Collins became the lead singer, they just completely started to suck. So I just kind of wanted to agree with you
it's
there.
not.
So,
Did I say that?
No, I'm agreeing.
No,
with what you're
I
saying.
think, like I said, crazily enough, Trick of the Tail and Wind and Wuthering may actually be better albums for me than some of the early Peter Gabriel stuff, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And that may be sacrilegious to say, but truthfully, there's some very, very good songs on these next 2 albums. Really good ones. And he performs masterfully both as a drummer and really amazingly as a singer, man.
Yeah. I mean, so this is actually my go-to Genesis album. Like, if I'm just looking at my shelf and I'm like, I want to listen to Genesis, I actually will pick this thing up first. Actually, I'm wearing it's not a true vintage, but it's a pretty old Trick of the Tail shirt right now.
Nice.
But, man, I love this record. Dance on a Volcano is such a cool song.
It is.
I love that little high pitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, so cool. And then the verse, man, that drum groove on that verse is like, it's like Rush. Like, dun, dun, dun. Yeah, I can't even really, like, sing it or vocalize it, but like such a weird verse rhythm, but it like makes you like excited, gets you kind of pumped up. It's like very anxious sounding.
Yeah.
Entangled, beautiful song. It's a ballad-esque type song, but really good. Squonk, super good groove, and you just want to like headbang to it. Madman Moon, probably one of the most underrated songs on this album.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it is. Really
Broadway
good.
Assault and Battery, solid. Ripple, awesome. Trick of the Tail, their first. Well, it kind of shows a little bit of the poppiness that you're talking about, and that had a little bit of success in the U.S. And then Los Endos. So, I mean, from a song standpoint, there's not a weak track on here, and
I agree.
Before this week, I would probably say this and then Lamb Lies Down, even though they're very different, would be like tied as my favorite because I have listened to this more than the others, and it's just so accessible yet complex and intricate, and you hear something different every time.
It's a great way to put it.
I mean, to me, this is a 4.8 as well. Like this thing is.
Wow.
I love this record. I think Phil Collins' voice is excellent on it. It has a little bit of everything that you want, and just perfect blend of prog and pop. Love this record.
Wow, that's surprising a little bit. I didn't think you'd go that high. I knew you were going to be pretty high on it, but I didn't think you'd go that high. That's pretty wild. Chuck, where are you? Where do you sit on this, man? Or tell me some thoughts about it and where you sit on it.
Okay. Well, before I heard the studio album, Trick of the Tail, I was familiar again with Seconds Out. So Trick of the Tail, Los Endos was one song to me at that time. So imagine my surprise when I listened to this and they open with Trick of the Tail and then it ends. It doesn't go into Los Endos. It's like, what? So that took a little getting used to, but again, maybe after 3 or 4 listens, it doesn't bug me. But yeah, I agree with that Mad Mad Moon. Oh my God, what a great song that is. And excuse me. Gee, I'm having a brain fart. Can't think of it. Let me look it up here.
What track you looking for? Robbery, Ripples. Squawk,
not Ripples.
Entangled.
Entangled, thank you. Yeah, the outro of Entangled, that just that like that those voices on that vocoder or whatever, Banks is using. It's just, again, it's one of those just fills my head with those voices that stays with me forever and haunts me in my sleep. The Trick of the Tail, that again is another quirky song about an alien or foreign being that's come to Earth, and it's kind of a whimsical story about this creature, and I think they missed an opportunity in the song where he escapes and he takes them out to show them where he came from, and they're told to look into the distance and they think they see a sparkling city in the distance. No, it was a trick of the eye. It's like, oh, they could have said Trick of the Tail there. But yeah, solid album. And again, like you said, Jeff, with Collins taking over the vocals on this, something that he reluctantly did, and I think in the rehearsals or whatever, when they wrote Squonk, they just asked him to go just sing this one song, and he did, and it's just like he kind of proved to himself that he could do be the vocalist out. And they didn't have to go out and find somebody else, because that was the big question: who's going to be the next front man for Genesis?
Who's going to fill in for Peter Gabriel?
Exactly. And I can only imagine if they found an outsider to come in, that dynamic, with another strong front man ego with Banks,
yeah.
I don't think that would have worked. So I think it was just
LSD, lead singer's disease.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think it was just a perfect moment for Collins to step to the front of the stage and take over that. And when they toured, that opened the door for Bruford to come in and drum on the tour on this.
And then Chester Thompson.
And then after they record the next album, then they went out and got Chester Thompson. But I think it was about this time also that Collins was in the band Brand X.
Yes.
And so he took a little bit of that influence and the influence of Mahavishnu and brought that to this album.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, here he is being influenced again by side projects and other bands in the vein of Prog. Just upping his game even more, I believe. If I were to any week of this album, there really isn't one. Maybe Ripples goes on a little bit too long, but and the artwork, the second cover by Hypnosis, I love how the characters on the album are all characters in the songs that's on the album itself.
Yeah, they're really good drawings.
And how they, it's just that burglar that's being poked with a nightstick in his back. He's got his hands up, and it's some guy that's picking the pocket of somebody else, and the nurse and stuff. And again, the band musical box that I saw them a second time, and they played about 3 or 4 tracks of the Trick of the Tail. And again, they had the original video footage that was used in the tour of '75 that they projected over the stage. So that was
Wow.
kind
That's
of
so
neat
cool.
to see this animation, because they used the characters off the cover of the album and animated them. And it was done pretty well if you consider it was done in 1975. So I think that was something that Genesis was well aware of. Was their stage, not so much the theatrics of Gabriel, but the special effects that they
Right.
into something that was pretty epic, I think.
Cool. What would you give it?
4.75.
4.75. All right.
Oh wow,
All right.
you like it like that, dude.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Let's see. What do I got here? Quick. Okay. Again, it starts out with another really great lead-off track, like the last several albums have. You know, I think that you can definitely tell with Dance on a Volcano that it's got a great proggy sort of tone to it, but it starts to point to that poppier direction. There's no question that they would move in the next 3 albums. Entangled, it's a really nice acoustic ballad. Something that I noted with Phil is that a lot of times his voice seemed to really suit the ballads. Like really, for some reason, his voice and his tone and his timbre and his range really fit the ballads that they did. And they always, you know, I'm not a super ballad dude a lot of the time. A lot of times ballads kind of just are like, well, you know, Chuck, what was that lyric I wrote you the other night from the shower? Remember? Roses are red, violets are blue. I hope your skull is crushed by a 2-ton truck. Was that what it was, or something like that?
I hope you your skull was crushed by a light post.
That's it. That's right. A telephone pole. A telephone pole.
The telephone pole, yeah. Something.
So you can tell I'm kind of a hopeless romantic, and those are the kind of songs I like to write. But anyway, those are the ballads I like to hear. Those kind of things. Lee's kind of like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy, man?
What did I get myself into? You're too far in now, Lee.
Yeah, too far.
I'm finding that.
Let's see. So that was, like I said, Entangled is a really beautiful song. Squonk, super cool, grooving prog rocker. Madman Moon, another really cool ballad, but it has a lot of proggy bits in the middle of it that it kind of really picks up and gets really progressive and jammy, man. It really has a jam vibe to it.
More dynamic.
Again, on that song, Phil really shines. Let's see and it also shows that they had ability to write more of them in a more mainstream fashion. Great. What's this say? Robbery, Assault, and Battery. Good tune with Phil using some PG voice affectations to sell the English humor. Works better than PG in my opinion. I was writing PG for Gabriel. Yeah. Ripples. Have to admit, I love this song. I really fucking love that song, man. The chorus in that song.
Yeah.
Oh, the chorus in that song is. Yeah. Wait a minute. Is that right? Ripples?
Yeah, that's another ballad, right?
That's the one that goes.
Yeah, it's really high. So
I love that chorus, man. And I shouldn't. I should hate it.
Well, it just makes you feel like everything's okay. Everything's okay,
but it's not okay. Nothing is okay. Why the fuck do I like this song? I love that song. It might even be my favorite song on the album. Fucking A, I hate that. I really hate that, man. All right. Anyway, moving on.
If
Los
I can
Endos.
Los Endos.
Go ahead. What?
I was going to say, during Los Endos, the one thing that was a mystery to me was the vocals that Collins does at the end. That's the kind of spoken word kind of thing. That's just really down in the mix. You don't really hear what he's saying.
Something from Supper's Ready, isn't it?
But apparently, yeah. I was going to say, I found out it was.
It's a reference to Peter Gabriel, I believe.
He was citing.
I didn't write it.
Singing some of the lyrics of Supper's Ready. I don't know.
Write it down, but it was in deference to Peter Gabriel. Los Endos, great track, a live favorite, and for me, it's probably their heavy metal track on the album. if we're looking at it in that way. The tour, Phil went out front to be the lead singer. Bill Bruford was brought in for drum live. Hypnosis cover. I think it's a bland cover. I'm sorry, guys. I don't really dig it. It doesn't do much for me. But then again, most of their covers don't do a lot for me. I mean, that's, it just is. It is what it is. Again, man. Oh, it's also the first time they filmed videos was for this album. They did a video for where is it?
They
Ripples.
did it for Ripples, Trick or Tail, and Robbery, Assault, and Battery. Because I actually have it on
Robbery,
the set.
that's right. And it was their highest charting album. And I would give this a 4 point. What did I give Lamb?
I don't know,
4.75.
4.75. I mean, you said it was your favorite, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Lamb's close to a 5 for me.
Yeah.
I didn't get into the 4.8, 4.9 stuff, but I usually keep it in quarters so I can think because I'm not mathematical.
Yeah, it's a better way of doing it, anyways.
No, I'm being a smart ass. I can do tenths, so I get that. I would give this a 5.7. Oh, wait, you can't do that, can you?
5.1 round.
I just wanted to be complicated, man. I just want to be fucking complex, man. Yeah, I give this like a 4.65. It is very, very good album, start to finish. There's some great Hackett work on it, but not enough Hackett, and that's going to prove to be pretty faithful. Real quick, we'll talk about Seconds Out. No, we won't. Not yet.
No, we won't. Not yet.
That's 76.
Yeah, I got mixed up.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
this was an album that proved to the band members, I think, that they can still write songs
Do it without Peter.
and do it without Peter.
Yep. And it was very, very successful because it was more successful than anything they did with Peter Gabriel.
And it also provided them, a show closer with
Los Endos.
Cats on a Volcano, Los Endos.
Yeah. The other thing that it also did, which was very important, was the amount of albums that it sold right out of the gate allowed them to clear a lot of the debt that they incurred from the Lamb tour.
That's true.
So
I think they said it's the first tour they actually made money on.
They made money on. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. So 12/27/76 is the second Phil Collins led album called Wind and Wuthering. Again, moving further and further towards commerciality. But this is an extremely palatable album. It really is. Okay, what do we got? I got two guys vying for it. Hold on. Go ahead. I was
going to give Chuck his moment.
I'll show him. Hang on. You want to give Chuck a moment here?
Yeah, give Chuck.
There you go.
Come on,
No.
we'll give the old guy a moment.
Yeah.
Back it up a little bit there. He's too close. There we go. Right there.
Yeah, artwork by Hypnosis, watercolor that the artist went back and said, I wish he had put more color into it. It's too
washed out.
Now this album cover does it for me because
Really?
it very much evokes what the album sounds like in a lot of ways for me. And I'll get into that in a minute. Lee, what do you want to talk about? Let me see if there's any other historical notes quick. Again, these are more commercial songs, but they're very good commercial songs on the whole and have enough creative, progressive elements to them that they sound fresh and are pretty memorable on the whole. A lot of memorable songs on this album. I will... hang on.
We're hanging on.
All right. Go ahead, Lee. Tell
Cool.
us about this album.
Well, transparency time.
Uh-oh.
When I was big into my college Genesis kick and all the prog bands, my collection stopped with Trick of the Tail.
Ooh.
Oh,
This is actually relatively new for me. I'm going to be frank with you guys. I have listened to Duke a lot, but for some reason this one was just elusive. And Jeff, the album cover always just kind of bored me. I was like, oh, this is the boring album. Okay,
Well,
I'm not
fuck
going to
off.
buy it. I do like the text up here in the front. That's a nice touch. And now that I'm doing watercolor, I realize how hard it is, so I have more appreciation for it. But so this week, I've listened to it about 4 times in full. I listened to tracks in and out, but this is new for me. So, poser alert. right here. 11th Earl of Mar. Great track. Love it. I think the production's really good on this album.
It is.
The keyboard tones are really good.
Yep.
Everybody just blends in really well. This album doesn't have as many standout pop moments. Like by pop, I mean like they catch my attention. I really liked the song "What Gorilla." The
Great
instrumental.
song.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like it just like kind of shoots you off into
And it's
space.
a jam and jazzy track. It's
Yeah.
jazzy,
So excellent playing, excellent musicianship, songwriting. Not as good as the performances, in my opinion. I think it's really good, but I'm very new to it, and I'm not as qualified as you guys in this album. But I'd give it a. I want to spend more time with it. I'd give it a 4, personally.
Keep in mind, that's got their biggest hit to date on it to that point.
Yeah.
Which song?
Own Special Way.
That was their highest chart
got
top
your own special
in the U.S.
way.
market
Yeah.
to date. So,
And I have to say, it's a sappy motherfucking ballad, but I really like that song.
that's a good one. Yes.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a grower for me, but for now, a 4. I just haven't had enough time with it.
All right, that's fair enough. I'll get to comments after this album, guys. Chuck, Wind and Wuthering.
Yeah. So this was.
You hate the album cover too, I know.
Well, I can appreciate what it takes to do a watercolor, but
That's
like
right,
Lee
you do
said,
watercolors,
the graphics, the title, the name, is pretty cool. And I'm a calligraphy guy, so I know a thing or two. Yeah, this was the album that I first studio album that I listened to. I was introduced to this at the same time I was listening to Seconds Out. And then, so this was the one. This is my Genesis album that I go to when I want to hear some Genesis. This is what I pull out of my collection, and side 2 on this. For you newbies and younger people out there that don't know it, side 1 and side 2, it's what used to be on the vinyl. You had A side and you had a B side.
Chuck the Educator.
Yes, you young whippersnappers out there. But enough of that. But I think this is the album that, with that track that you mentioned, "What Gorilla," I think that's the song that Collins had brought in his influence from playing with Brand X. And
Yes,
Motivation.
you're right.
It's evident on that one. So that's where that came in. But like I said, when I put this on, I like to listen to side 2 all the way through. I don't think there's a weak track on this. And again, you got like whimsical lyrics about all in a mouse's night. The story of a night through the eyes of a mouse. And then the cat has his last little commentary, seeing the largest mouse it's ever seen in its life. That's
right. It's 10 feet tall, right?
10 feet tall, right.
I did really like that track, listening to it.
What's that?
All in a Mouse's Night, that one really stuck out to me too.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in that tune,
It's a good tune. It's a lot of cool, and it's very proggy too.
Yeah, absolutely. So still staying with the prog vein. Blood on the Rooftops, great track. Unique slumbers for the sleepers, In That Quiet Earth, into Afterglow. I mean, come on, man. Those are just like 3 songs that just,
Well, 2 of those are
good morning, good evening, and good night.
You might want to add 2 of those are instrumental, and one, Into the Quiet Earth. Man, that's a cool track. Very atmospheric, very ambient sounding. A lot of really cool guitar from Hackett on that one.
Yeah. So, and then an Afterglow. I'm a sucker for lyrics that include San Francisco in it, or was that Blood on the Rooftops? One of those tracks, but anyways,
Forget which one.
I think it's Blood on the Rooftops.
I think you're right. Yeah, it is. It is that. Yeah.
But the opener, 11th Earl of Mar, One for the Vine. That's another fantasy bass lyric, that's pretty out there with you. You think the idea of this guy that loses his footing on the side of a mountain and he stands up and he's in another world where he was invisible a moment before, and these people just view him as a god, and now he's leading them to battle, to do whatever, and he observes some other person on a slope that falls down and stands up and disappears from sight. It's just like, God, that's just spacey stuff there. That's Banks that wrote that. So, that's one thing that I loved about this band, is just unusual lyrics that just put you in a place that is into somebody's imagination, essentially. A reality that I didn't know was there. It's not in my reality, but anyways, love this stuff. So this is I give this a 4.75 as well.
Wow, very nice.
Cool.
I got a couple notes on this one. Again, another really solid effort in the post Peter Gabriel era.
Mm-hmm.
And again, man, Phil Collins' voice kind of shines on this album. It's really quite good. And 11th Earl Lamar has that really cool, epic, grandiose, almost Blut aus Nord intro. And then it's not really Blut aus Nord. But again, this is all for my metal watchers that are, watching. I'm giving a little bit of tie-in.
What is a Blut aus Nord?
Blut aus Nord, Blood of the North, black metal,
French
epic
black
metal guy.
Yeah, I think I've heard of them on your talking about.
You've heard me talk about them.
Yes, I have.
Really, really cool. Really, it's like I said, it's got that epic intro, and then it sort of settles into more prog pop territory, but it's still got a lot of instrumental chops going on. Killer bass tone on that song. Killer bass tone. In fact, on this album, I have to say that Mike Rutherford, throughout most of their albums, has just a really, he's not what I'd call, he's not Geddy Lee, or he's not even Chris Squire or something like that, but clearly there's some influential mojo coming from the Chris Squire camp, because he wants that bass tone to be thick and meaty and out there. And I don't think he's not on the same level as a player as Chris Squire, and I'm sure he'd say that, or Geddy Lee, but his tone is really good on all the albums. This one in particular. What else do we have? Okay, One for the Vine. That's the one on the album I'm not crazy about, and I know it's the one they played a lot, and it's the real proggy one, but it drones on a little bit for me. That's the one song on the album I don't really love. Your Own Special Way, biggest hit to date, solid, wistful, if sappy ballad. I love it. What Gorilla, cool, jazzy, prog, noodling, instrumental, really good. All in a Mouse's Night, very solid, upbeat, poppy, but super cool track. Great lyrics, fun lyrics.
Yeah.
Blood on the Rooftops, man, I really love this song. You can tell it's a Hackett song right when it starts. It's got that cool classical intro. It's very political. It's talking about the news and how political things can be. It talks about politics in the States and in Europe. Really awesome track. And then the two instrumentals, I forget their names. What was it called again?
What Gorilla?
No, the other
in the Quiet Earth and Afterglow.
Afterglow. In the Quiet Earth is really cool. There's just something about that track that really caught my ear with regards to the dynamics between Banks and Hackett, and Hackett's playing on it. And again, like I said, man, Steve Hackett, super underrated guitar player. In Prog, he's got to be the most underrated guitarist out there. At the end of this tour, well, first of all, they use Chester Thompson was hired as the drummer for the tour, and I believe he stayed with them. When I saw them, the one time I saw them, which was on the Invisible Touch tour in '86, I believe, at Veterans Stadium, and it was a massive show, man. There had to have been 120,000 people at this show, and we were pretty far back, and we ended up leaving before the show was over because my buddy was not feeling well, but we were so far away from the stage that and this was in '86, so you had camera TVs, but you didn't have what you
The
have
giant
now, where you
screens.
can see.
Yeah.
You didn't have the giant screens, and it was just, I don't know. It was, I hate to say it, it was kind of, they didn't do a lot of old material. This was for '86, so Invisible Touch was out, and man, I fucking hate that
Whole
shit.
different audience.
Yeah, different audience. A lot
Oh
of
my God!
kids.
Yes, different audience.
Yeah,
Completely.
and
My,
I mean, they
my.
did do Abacab, and I remember that being cool. And they did Fifth of Firth. They did do. I'll pull up the set list in a minute when we move on here, but there was a couple good songs. But overall, I was kind of bored with it. And Lee, to your point, you know, when you're born, you can't help when you're born. Well, I could have seen them a lot earlier, and I didn't, because I didn't really know them that well until the early '80s and the mid '80s, and so I didn't know enough to go when it was good, and I wasn't really old enough. But you know, in 1980, I was 14 or 15, so I still couldn't drive. It wasn't until 80, 81 I started going to. I mean, my first concert was Kiss in '79, but Mom took me. You know, it was one of those deals. And then '80, I got to go. My friend's parents took me and my buddy to see Rush, but I still was a year or two away from driving to go to my own shows, and so I just didn't go. But I'm glad I got to see him once. But I would have rather have seen him during this period of time. Chester Thompson, Hackett quits after this tour, feeling like his contributions aren't really measuring up. That the band are Tony Banks in particular is not allowing him to contribute like he liked to.
Case in point, the band rehearsed Hackett's "Please Don't Touch," and they rejected it.
They rejected it. Yeah.
They didn't. They decided not to record it, and they recorded "What Gorilla" in its place, and that was the name of Hackett's solo album that same year.
Allegedly, Phil says that he didn't feel like he connected with the song. It was more Phil's thing than it was Peter's. But you know, who knows? Afterglow is a great track too. I forgot to mention that. I think that the weird, for me, this album, and like I said, the artwork kind of implies the feeling of this album, which is kind of a bit melancholic and sad at times. But I think it's a less immediate album than Trick of the Tail, but I think it's almost as good. I would give it a 4. What did I give Trick? 4.6. I'll give this a 4.5. I really like this album a lot. It's just really, really good album. So, do anyone have Seconds Out? You have it, Chuck?
I do, but what about this one? It's the outtakes of Wind and Weathering.
I didn't really bring that up. I didn't.
That's an
usually
EP. So
do EPs. Yeah,
3
that's
songs.
Spot the Pigeon, right?
Yeah, it's Spot the Pigeon.
Yeah. I mean, there's
Funny
three songs on there, right?
3 songs that didn't make the Wind and Weathering. So Match of the Day, Pigeons, and Inside Out. And the really only good song up for this Match of the Day, which is talking about a song.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I can
Peter
see why it
Banks-
was left off.
or Tony Banks kind of said, yeah, they were kind of forgettable tracks. That's what he thought anyway.
Yeah.
Let's see Seconds Out quick, and we'll briefly touch on it.
I thought
This
you know
is this is the live album that came out October 14th, 1977, mainly recorded in Paris, France. There are 2 tracks that were done earlier on the Trick of the Tail tour where Bruford plays, but Chester Thompson plays on the majority of it.
Yeah, and that Bruford was from the U.S. tour.
Right. Yeah, I forget where the 2 songs were from. Atlanta, maybe, or
I don't
maybe it
know.
was San Francisco. I can't remember.
I like that layout. That's cool.
The story goes
Here's Chester
that
right here,
while they were
Oh, yeah.
selecting tracks in the studio for this album,
and there's Bruford in the lower corner there.
Hackett came into the studio where Tony and Mike were picking tracks for this, and he said, "I quit." And he left, and he was walking down the street, and Phil Collins came driving up to meet up with the rest of the band. And Phil said, "Hey, jump in, let me give you a lift." And Hackett declined the ride. And the story is that the reason he declined the ride was because he knew that if he got in the car, he'd have to tell Phil he quit, and Phil would be the only guy in the band that could coax him into staying, and he didn't want to stay.
Yeah, I read that too. That's true.
I have a quick question on this live album and this touring cycle. So they had 2 drum kits on the stage?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
was
because
there
during,
ever
Los,
Go ahead.
during Los Endos, I think him and Chester would play a duet, I believe.
Oh,
Correct?
more
Yeah.
more than just that. They would every seemed like anytime there's any sort of extended jam on any song, Phil would go to the drum kit and drum.
Now, when I saw them in Philly, they did do that. They did.
Yeah.
I only remember him doing it once, but he might have done it more.
There's the 2 drum kits right there.
Yeah, it just jogged my memory. Was there ever a time when Chester and Bill played at the same time in a show?
No, Bruford just played that one tour, and that was it.
Yeah.
And
that would have been cool.
I think I saw something where he was in between projects or something like that, and he was wondering why Genesis didn't ask him to stay, but he was also working with Wakeman and Wetton on something, and I don't know what that was because I don't remember anything that Wakeman recorded with.
Yeah, I don't either.
Wetton. So
you're right. That I saw that, and I don't remember what that was.
Yeah, so it's like where are those tapes?
Yeah.
So Chester Thompson and Phil, and they're credited, I think, on the album, which I just had open. Who played what songs they played the drum solos on, because they had to credit Bruford.
That's right. They had to credit Bruford on the 2 tracks he was on. Okay. And there's a foul up on, because it implies that Phil is playing the keyboard solo.
Well, the way that they listed it is robbery, assault, and battery keyboard solo Phil.
That's it.
Phil didn't play the keyboard solo. Phil played the drum solo. Yeah. In Rubber, and then in Firth of Fifth, it's Phil and Chester that played the drums. Musical Box, Chester and Phil. Supper's Ready, Apocalypse 9.8, Chester and Phil. Cinema Show, Bill Bruford and Phil. Keyboard solo. Again, they didn't play the keyboard solo.
Yeah, the way they printed it was confusing.
Solos. Yeah. Then Phil and Chester on Los Endos. So you can see there's more than just Los Endos where they drum together. And at any time that Collins was on the stage singing, it was Chester playing the drums by himself back there.
Yeah, great.
And when I saw him in 2007, Thompson was still their drummer. He drummed with them, toured with them for a very, very long time.
All right, so let's hit some comments quick, and then we'll wrap up with the final 2 albums, right? Is that where we're at?
Yeah, we are.
Damn, making good. We made actually really good time. We're going to end up wrapping up by 3.5 hours probably. We'll do some quick comments here. What do we got? Chuck hears voices in his head. You heard it here, folks. Well, he probably hears my voice. He wants to kill himself. Yeah, I have that effect on people. That's like if Dave Grohl replaced Cobain. Oh, wait, what happened there? What?
I can see.
That's like if Dave Grohl replaced Cobain for Nirvana on vocals. He could pull it off, but it would be weird. Yeah, one is the loneliest number. Oh, Harry Nilsson. Yeah, Lee. Good point about. Although TDN's version, I'm not sure what's going on there. Dreadful Mints.
We're talking about the Harry Nilsson song. One is the loneliest number.
You hear the Foo Fighters death metal. Oh yeah, they're apparently doing some death metal album. I don't know, man. I think Dave's a cool guy, but I think he's oversaturated. He's like Dave Grohl is like the Phil Collins of the '80s and the 2010s. It's like everywhere you look, it's fucking Dave Grohl. I'm sick of seeing fucking Dave Grohl, man. All right, what else we got?
Overexposed, right?
Yeah.
They did that disco album last year. What's next? Dreadful Minutes going full blown. Everyone seems so surprised about the Foo Fighters song. Did they forget about Probot? Well, yeah, Dave. That Probot album's pretty damn heavy. Chuck, you were trying to say Dave Mysterious. Yeah, that's exactly what he was trying to say there, Rick.
I don't even know what that is.
A Mayhem album. First Wave Black Metal, Chuck. You know that. Come on, man. Get your fucking.
Oh, John, I'm just trying to keep you all guys confused.
Okay.
About.
Actually, nice
I'm
call.
just pretending to do this.
No. Duke is my favorite of the Collins era. This is one of the best. Yeah, man, I agree. I really like that album. Can't say the same about Duke. I listened to it today. I like parts of it. I don't like much of it. Let's see. Okay, we got this guy that's saying Vim Vom Toure. Block user, thank you. What do you got? Probot record was really good. Granted, had the best thing. Yep. Yeah, it was good. It was a good album. Real good. Bob Ross art. I don't know what that means. Is that the guy that did the artwork for? Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Never heard of him. Oh, shit.
Bob Ross, the Afro guy, Afro wearing
Is it?
dude on
Oh,
PBS.
that's the joke he was making. I get it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Wandering Tree. Actually, that tree on Wind and Wuthering, if you see the album by Discipline called Unfolded Like Staircase, that's that band from, I believe, Michigan. That's like basically, you love them, Discipline, Chuck. That they have that tree on the front of the album. Every son of them, but the Emerald Law is by far okay. Chuck, where do babies come from? Chuck?
I'll go one-on-one with Dreadful on that.
I think you might want to.
Yeah,
That's a deep conversation. He might need.
He's evidently he needs a lot of help.
He needs some time with you for sure. What's up, Nick? How you doing, dude? What do we got here? Thralls of Metal. Nick is here. There we go. Thralls. Yes, it does, man. All right, so we're moving on to the final two albums that we're going to talk about. We will discuss the post.
Do we have
There's three. There's what is there? 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 albums after that. I think.
Sounds about right. I'd have to look at it, but
I think it's 5. Yeah.
So 15 studio albums?
Which we will probably all be able to summarize our feelings about those 5 albums after Duke in a matter of 3 or 4 minutes tops. So, yeah, well, hey man, that's between those guys. I don't want to get in between that. Literally,
Don't butt in there.
Okay, so here we go. And then there were 3 released on my birthday, 3/31, March 78. And again, this is probably where my first real recognition of this band came from this album and their biggest hit single, which I believe reached number 14 on the American charts, Billboard charts, and the album was, really a huge success. I really like that album, man. That cover's really cool looking.
Cover's cool.
one of my favorite covers of theirs.
Time lapse stuff, really cool.
Again, Hypnosis.
Is it Hypnosis?
Yeah, it's Storm. Got involved
this
with Storm.
Okay.
feels so Storm.
Yeah.
Ferguson.
Very cool. So this is the first without Hackett. Colin started to write a little bit more now. If I'm correct about this, no, that's the next album. Sorry. They had their biggest hit with this, obviously, with "Follow You, Follow Me." To this point, again, this really opened up a lot of doors for them as far as becoming sort of the stadium act. Because something that really needs to be discussed quickly here is that probably until about this album, Genesis was not a stadium band. They were not playing big amphitheaters like Yes was, or like obviously nowhere near like what Pink Floyd was doing, or even Jethro Tull. Jethro Tull was playing big sports arenas around this time, during the mid 70s. Genesis was not doing that. They were playing large theaters. They were playing some smaller amphitheaters, but they weren't playing your I don't know what the Oracle, is that what it was called out there, Chuck, in San Francisco? Or is that what it's called now?
They're playing the Oakland Coliseum, which is where the basketball team plays at.
Okay.
Over in Oakland. And it's still there, even though the team moved to San Francisco.
But they weren't playing there on Trick of the Tail, though. They weren't playing that large of venues.
I'm
saying.
I think they were, which is
what I read. I mean,
well, I was actually just going to look up the information on the tours.
Okay, cool.
So I'll do that while we can argue, and one of us will be right.
Well, one of us will be right. It'll be me. But anyway.
Yeah, I knew. I'm not going to challenge you.
I'll throw some thoughts out on this one quick, because these last 2 albums, I've got quick thoughts, and they're not very deep. It really opens strong with Down and Out. Really great tune. Really, really good tune. One of their stronger tunes. Again, another great opening track. They had a knack for doing that, putting great opening tracks out there. Undertow. Really cool. Kind of dark. Kind of menacing sort of sounding at times. Really good Tony Banks track. Ballad of Big has a very 80s sound, but it's solid. And again, really great vocals by Phil. Burning Rope is probably one of the 2 what I would call the proggy tracks, and it's a really good song. Deep in the Motherlode, really like this one. I think it's about mining. If you read the lyrics, it seems like it is.
49ers, Gold Rush.
Yeah.
I think it's the spirit of that one. And interesting, the 2 songs on this album are about the U.S. West.
Are they? Oh, wow.
Ballad of Mr. Big, a rancher, hired the guy to drive his cattle.
I did not know.
Gets ambushed tonight by an Indian tribe.
I didn't know they were super historical like that. Genesis doing history.
Sweet. Who would have thought,
Yeah, Deep in the Motherlode has that really cool synth hook that is just super cool. Really like that. Scenes is okay. And then Follow You, Follow Me. It's a great song. And actually, it was kind of an afterthought. And they weren't even going to put it on the album. And the record company heard it and said, whoa, that's your hit song right there. And it turned out to be their biggest hit, one of their biggest hits. Now, they had a few that came after that, obviously. But that was, and, it is a song that, sure, you hear the poppiness of it, but, man, I really like that keyboard solo. Just
and the drumming.
Cool,
the drumming on that's really
great.
cool.
And the guitar line.
Reggae-esque in a way.
It does have a little reggae with the guitar and the slapback
Caribbean.
echo and stuff like that, but it's a super cool track. Yeah, go ahead, Lee. What do you think about it?
I don't have this one's a lot like Winded Wuthering, where it's actually relatively new to me for the whole context of the album. I will say if I had to stack them up next to each other, this one grabbed my attention a lot more. It just feels so much like a transitional album and not the transition towards something that I really am excited about. So, I mean, I thought the album was kind of weak, frankly. Down and Out is sick. Great opener, great energy. It's like if you just had that style of track a couple more times, I think it would be a lot stronger. I do like Follow You, Follow Me. It brings me back to memories of like being a kid. Because like that would be a song that was like on the Greatest Hits CD that I'm sure my parents were playing. Just has it's like we were talking about, like Phil Collins does have that ballad voice, and he just makes you feel comfortable and just like everything's at peace.
For better or for worse.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good track. But man, I'm looking at this track list and I'm like, none of these songs are really grabbing me, but I'm a noob with this one, but I was not that impressed. I'd give it a 3.
I could see that, and it's definitely, I don't know. We didn't really give a rating to Seconds Out because I don't even own it, but I've heard that's a crazy good live album, so I need to probably get that.
One of the best, I think.
Yeah.
If I had to rate this, I'd probably give it maybe a 3.5, maybe even a little lower. The good songs are really, really good. But then there's a lot of what feels like filler on it. There's a song on there called Snowbound that's okay too. I remember that one kind of rings a little bit of a bell, but none of it, with the exception of maybe the first 3 tracks and then Follow You, Follow Me, and Deep in the Motherlode. They're really half the album is really good and half the album is kind of forgettable. So that's maybe a 2.5 or a 2.75 for me. Actually, more I think about it. So. Chuck, what you got on this one here?
Well, this one, I think version I have has also got a DVD copy with it. So it's got some interviews.
Oh, you got the cool version, man.
Well, I just pulled a Kiefer on you guys.
What's that?
Got the latest.
You showed the basic one and you pull out the box set.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the box set. No. But this is a very nostalgic album for me because I was 19, living on my own for the first time, and bought this album, and I just totally connect with this. And I remember just sitting around with my roommates and listening to this, and the only one that really put me off was Follow You, Follow Me. And it's like, what is this doing on here? It's like, well, they got a pop song on here. How did that happen? Felt it was a little bit out of place, and it was an indicator of things to come with regards to poppiness, that's for sure. But a song that neither one of you mentioned is The Lady Lies, which is, again, another fantasy song about, a knight going out in the forest to rescue a damsel in distress, and turns out that he's a witch and kills him. And so it's, again, Genesis, writing stuff in the fantasy world.
That one had sort of a bluesy vibe to me that seemed a little weird.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird thing to it, but
Yeah.
Scenes from a Night's Dream is the story, or it's a song about that comic strip of Little Nemo.
Oh God, really?
And it was a popular strip. I forget when, but it was kind of funny that, yeah, this little kid's he's dreaming bigger ideas than his head can hold. Anyways, there was a friend that I knew that had wanted me to come pick him up for a camping trip. And I went to pick him up. He wasn't home from his job yet. His mom was there, and she goes, "Why don't you just hang out? And here's the library." I went in there, and I found a book of Little Nemo, the comic strip. Was about this thick, and then so I was just like reading all this stuff. Like, man, I just found out about this Little Nemo guy for the first time in a song on this Genesis album. This is a trip.
Man, dude, for a second there, dude, I thought we were going to get like a MILF thing out of you right there.
A what?
Like the guy's mom invited you in and we were going to get a MILF thing.
No. I'll
Get
talk
cookies ready for you. Yeah.
And she was dressed in nothing but a satin bow.
And then I just found this book. Nothing ever happened.
I'm sorry. I had to go there. It was too funny.
No, it's to be expected from you, Jeff.
You didn't get
Lee,
that
I'm
lucky.
disappointed though. God damn.
I was playing along.
Yeah, I know. Okay, but no, I really enjoyed this album. I like all the songs on it, and again, it was one of the things that I thought was strange. Is the fact here we got this English band talking about Western scenes, talking about rodeo and Indians and cowboys, and talking about the 49er gold rush in the Mother Lode out here in California. And it's like, wow, they know of us out here in the West Coast of United States. So I really like this album. I give it a 4.5.
Wow.
It's because of my nostalgia factor.
Nostalgia. Yeah.
It just it's that's what makes me
Makes
give it on the
sense.
rating.
Makes
So
sense.
The really good tracks on there, I'd give a 4.5 too. It's unfortunately there's a lot of tracks on there just kind of forgettable for me. That's the
Yeah.
So
well, the Follow You, Follow Me, I do enjoy today.
I love that song.
And I have a friend that I met who told me about the tour, the retirement tour, as it was jokingly referred to,
Right.
where the band just got together and they toured. They didn't put a new album out or anything like that. I think it was 2007. And my buddy had traveled down 2 hours away. He drove down, got here to the venue in San Jose, the hockey rink, and I guess it was his birthday, and his girl that was with him was able to persuade somebody at the door to let him in because it was his birthday. So he was able to go in and watch the sound check.
Oh wow.
And he was able to watch Phil Collins come out on stage and go through the drumming for Follow You, Follow Me.
Oh, cool.
So
That's
it's
cool.
like, what a treat that must have been. So yeah, it's got a special place in my heart, this album.
That's
does.
cool. No, that's nice. That's nice to hear. So we're moving on to the final album that we're going to get into directly because we didn't really say it, but we kind of decided it that we didn't really want to go over the last album, so it's not a full discography deep dive because I think we all have the similar feelings about the last 5 albums. This is called Duke, and it came out 3/28, 1980. And I would say with this album, the transformation to pop, a pop band had pretty much become complete. The one thing I noticed about this album that really did put me off quite a bit is the amount of electronic percussion that's on here. There's a drum machine on it, and you can really hear it, and I fucking hate drum machines. The only time I like drum machines is on really bad old goth, or really bad electronica, techno stuff, the early stuff. That's the only place I can kind of stomach it, because a lot of those are one-man bands or two-man bands, and they have no money, and I don't even like them there. But a lot of those guys knew what to do with them, yeah. So, real quick on this, Duchess is a really good tune. Probably the best song on there overall. It's probably the most proggy, actually. Man of Our Times, is that what it's called? Man of Our Times?
He's
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, Man of Our
Yeah.
Time.
That's a pretty decent song. On obviously, Misunderstanding. That's probably the first song I realized. Oh, this is Genesis. Okay,
Cool
very
6/8
much.
tune.
Yeah, it just sounds like a Phil Collins rock song.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's got a good like 6/8 groove to it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love pop songs that are in 6/8. Like I think I don't know if I have to count it out, but like Toto's "Hold the Line" and
I
"Misunderstanding"
think you're right.
have a
Down,
kind of good
down,
feel to
down,
them like
down,
that.
You're right. Right there. It's got that
1,
same.
2, 3, 4,
Down,
5, 6. Yeah.
down, down, down. Yeah, you're right. That's very similar. You picked up on it. Yeah. That went to number 14 in the U.S.
Turn It On Again, the other hit.
Turn it on. Yeah. What's this called? Heath Hayes.
Mhm.
Big ballad track. It's not too bad. Turn It On Again. I like it. It's an earworm song. Obviously, it was a bigger hit in the Europe than it was in the States, and it was the other way around for Misunderstanding. Misunderstanding was big in the States, not as big in Europe. Let's see. It reminds me. Let's just say. Well, again, Turn It On Again. It has that, just like Misunderstanding. It sounds like all the Phil Collins solo material hits.
Yeah.
Which, of the Phil Collins solo material, the only one I can stand is In the Air at Night. And the reason I like that song is it's kind of creepy and it's kind of got a cool groove to it, and Miami Vice. I mean, come on. Other than that, I just, it doesn't, the rest of his material, stuff like Susu Studio and
Oh yeah, that song's
what are some of the other ones that he did?
You're not going to get any of that out of me because I purposely have forgotten them all.
Yeah, I just, there's another one off Face Value that was pretty big. I can't remember it. It's just
pull up Phil Collins hits for you.
it's just terrible. It's just terrible shit. And it made him very rich. That's the crazy thing. It made him incredibly rich. But unfortunately, the stuff that he was writing solo, or whoever was writing with him, infiltrated Tony Banks, taste meter, because Tony started seeing that Phil was getting super popular as a solo artist and was like, oh, I want some of that, because his solo stuff didn't sell anywhere near like Phil Collins did. Nor did Mike Rutherford's, solo material until he did the Mike and the Mechanics album. So Turn It On Again, earworm song, but whatever. Cul-de-sac's actually a pretty cool song, and the last two Duke songs are all right. My notes really quick on this. Originally, there was 6 songs that were supposed to be in a Duke suite. It included
Turn It On.
Behind the Lines, Duchess, guide vocal, Turn It On, and the
Duke's
two Duke
Travels,
tracks.
Duke End.
Yep. But then they decided they didn't want to do that because they didn't want it to be compared to Supper's Ready.
Again.
And again.
Which, how could that even be done? Even if it was that length, it doesn't sound anything like it.
Yeah, I mean, and nobody would make that mistake as a Genesis fan. Although they did perform those 6 as a suite at many shows. And my issues with these 2 albums overall is that, 90%. Let's just say here. Why can't I read one fucking word? It's the most important word that I wrote there, and I can't read it. 90% of the material that comes after it. 90% of the material that comes after these 2 albums is that many of these songs are just indistinguishable, and they all become pretty cookie cutter pop hits. Tonight, tonight, tonight. I'm not saying that tonight, tonight, tonight sounds like Illegal Alien or sounds like, Stay With Me, or, I mean, there's just, but it just. It seemed like they hit on formulas to write about 4 or 5 different types of hits following these 2 albums, and somewhat especially with Duke on, and everything just started to sound like Phil Collins solo material, and that just was not working for me anymore. And songs like Invisible Touch and Land of Confusion and all those hits that they had on MTV. Lee, I could see where you might identify more with them than like Chuck or I because of your age and maybe where you came in. But your parents are probably my age, right? Or like how your dad's maybe a little older than me, right?
Yeah, they're like
60?
60. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're Chuck's age. And they probably were listening to some of this back then. And so I could see where you might have a connection to them because of your age more than anything. But for me, man.
Don't plant those ideas
All
about
right.
me.
Well, okay. I'm sorry. I mean, again, these sound.
I heard them, and yeah, I mean, I feel you.
When after '81, this band kind of died to me. They really did after '81. And although I saw them in 1986, I kind of went because a buddy had a spare ticket. I don't think I'd have bought a ticket to this show because I just felt like they weren't going to play anything that was interesting. While you guys are talking, I'll look up. I'll look up my set list. So go ahead, Lee. Tell me about what you think of this.
So I actually have quite a bit of time with this one. I've listened to this one for many years now. It's like my guilty pleasure 80s album to put on. So this is a big, hard transition. Like, it's very much the new era. They hit the 80s. But I actually kind of like it. I don't think it's nearly as good as some of the previous ones, but it's just like fun, lighthearted, definitely cheesy. Like, I put it on to not take it too seriously. I also think it's funny on my CD copy. I think this is an original copy. It has one of those disclaimers like, with this compact disc, we recorded as closely as possible to the analog equipment, but that might reveal limitations of the source tape. I don't know. It's just like, no one would write that nowadays. The hits are awesome on it, or rather they keep the album from falling short. Like, if it was just the dupe concept, but there wasn't Misunderstanding, this album would kind of stink. But then it makes Misunderstanding better when you have the kind of prog elements. The production's very 80s, but it's kind of like you put it in knowing that, and that you're like at that moment seeking that. So if you're in the mood, I think it's a pretty good album. I do like it better than And Then There Were Three, because it's not a, in-betweener album like And Then There Were Three were. It's like, to me, the best of the true pop Genesis stuff. But yeah, that's about what I have to say. I think the drumming on Behind the Lines is pretty cool. Like, I like how it just whips right into it. Yeah, I don't think it's that bad. I would give it a 3.5, maybe 3.6.
All right, I'm gonna read this solo. I'm gonna go black for a second. I'll come to you, Chuck, for this album. I want to read this set list, and I was off. I thought I went to see them in '86. I actually saw them in '92, June of '92, and this is the set list I saw at Veterans Stadium: Land of Confusion, No Son of Mine, Driving the Last Spike. Okay. Then they did an old medley, and this was the best part of this. Is after they did this, I wanted to leave, and we did. They did Dance on a Volcano, Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, the Musical Box closing section, Firth of Fifth, and I Know What I Like. They also had Illegal Alien, and that's all in there. I remember that, and that pissed me off. Then they did Dreaming While You Sleep, Fading Lights, Jesus He Knows Me, Home by the Sea, Second Home by the Sea. Those two are okay.
Yeah, those are good.
Hold My Heart, Domino, Drum Duet, which we were there through that, and I Can't Dance. The encore was Tonight, Tonight, Invisible Touch, and Turn It On Again. We left during Tonight, Tonight, Tonight. So we almost made it through the whole thing. But other than that, Dance on a Volcano, Lamb Lies Down, Musical Box, Firth of Fifth, I Know What I Like. I could have given two fucks about that show.
Yeah.
So hang on a second. I'm going to get out of there and bring Chuck up. And again, that was the only time I ever saw them. So, all right, Chuck, what do you got?
Well, that's unfortunate. I saw him twice. I saw him tour Duke, and I saw him tour Abacab. So,
okay.
Well, before Invisible Touch, so that's good.
And they probably did. I was going to say they probably did more older material then.
Well, I remember for Abacab, there were some fans that were seated behind us that were groaning when they played Misunderstanding, and groaning when they play Turn It On, and groaning for all the hits. And it's like those guys, they're here because of Lamb Lies Down and Trick the Tail and, Foxtrot and that, but they, in 1980, they were still playing a lot of the stuff that I think the only thing from in them number 3 was Follow You, Follow Me, but still a lot of stuff from Trick of the Tail and Wind and Weathering and Lamb Lies Down. So I was able to see.
So what's your take on Duke? What would you? And I think I gave it like a 3.25. I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's Behind the Lines and the Duchess. I do like that drum machine sound to it. And then fast forward to Duke Travels in the outro, and those are the proggy songs on the album.
Oh yeah.
That I enjoy, and yeah, it's like it's a Misunderstanding, and Turn It On Again. Turn It On Again, I kind of like, and
that's a cool tune.
It's interesting that it was part of that suite that they were considering of playing, a 26-minute chunk of music that included that and 3 or 4 other tracks. That they decided to, thankfully, to separate them and make them stand alone on their own. Interesting, while I was listening to this album, I was listening on YouTube Music, and when Misunderstanding came up, they synced it with the video of of the song. I guess that was on MTV. It's like 1980, right? So, and some observations I made during that video, there's a lot of things in the video that don't exist anymore. For instance, a payphone, which is very centered in the video, where Collins is trying to call, and his gal on a payphone. So how often do you see payphones?
Just wondering about the divorce papers, right?
Well, that was exactly what was going on, because he had spent some time, I guess, in Vancouver, because that's where his ex had moved to. Yep. To try to mend that, and it didn't work. And so I think that's 2 months that he spent doing that. And I guess at this time too, when he was touring with Brand X, I think, when they were writing this album, which I saw also. The other thing,
different band.
Oh yeah, completely different bands, but
jazz, rock, really rocking shit. Pretty
being able to see Phil Collins drumming and John Goodsall playing lead guitar in a nightclub of like maybe 200 people was fucking mind blowing.
That's cool.
But yeah, so the other things that were included in the video that are non-existent today, or hard to find these days. Payphones, you might find one here or there. Drive-in movies. There's a section in the video where they're in a drive-in movie parking lot, or in the drive-in movie. There was a Ford Pinto station wagon in the background with that fake wood siding on it. And then, of course, Phil Collins' hair was still on his head back then.
Yeah.
Maybe, sort of, kind of.
Yeah. So he had more hair in 1980 than he did in 2007. But yes, overall, I mean, it was, it was an album that was, a big indicator of things to come in the road to pop stardom, if you will. But Jeff, what?
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, when I saw him at the basketball stadium. I saw him in Oakland Coliseum, and on this tour, and I saw him after the Abacab album came out. I saw him at that tour, which is the same place, in the same basketball stadium. So they were not in the stadiums quite yet. And then I looked up the Second Outs tour, or the Trick of the Tail tour, was at Winterland in San Francisco.
Which how big's that? Like 6,000?
No, maybe 1,500 people.
It
was an old ice skating rink, and I
didn't think it was huge.
No, I was there once, but cool place to see bands for sure. It's got a lot of nostalgia surrounding it, a lot of memories of people that grew up here in the Bay Area. Go to Winterland and pay $2 and see 3 bands play twice in a night, get out at like 5 a.m. and go home. I didn't have that experience there, but yeah. And then they also played the Berkeley Community Theater before that in '76 or '75. So smaller venues.
That's what I thought. And
so yeah, the arena shows, I wouldn't have gone to those because
let's talk about that a minute. And we don't need to spend a lot of time with it unless Lee wants to get into it. And I'm only saying that because it maybe is the material you're more familiar with. For me, without question, I'm not lying. I went through each album. I saw a lot of songs I recognized. Land of Confusion, Illegal Alien, which boy, that song, how about today, man? The woke culture I'm surprised they haven't fucking destroyed those guys. I'm sure somewhere they probably have. So we're talking, what are we talking? We're talking Abacab. We're talking the Genesis album. We're talking Calling All Stations. We're talking
Invisible Touch.
What?
Invisible Touch.
Invisible Touch. And then We Can't Dance.
Yeah, We Can't Dance. I'm not lying. I swear I'm not lying, man. I went through every album and looked. Now, like I said, there was a lot of songs I recognized. So that tells me one thing. They wrote a lot of songs that got on MTV, which was huge for them. And they wrote a lot of songs that were played on the radio. And what did that translate into? They moved up into stadiums and they made a shit fucking ton of money. So I'm sure that Tony Banks, Mike Rutherford, and Phil Collins' bank accounts would argue vociferously with me about the point I'm about to make right now. But artistically, they took a massive shit after Duke. And yes, there are tons of people out there that would tell me I'm fucked in the head. And they might be very right. They probably are. But from 83 on, man, I found four songs that I actually like. Mama, and I don't love that song, but it reminds me of Miami Vice in the 80s. And there is some cool, Phil gets angry on that thing. And screams his metal scream on there. Home by the Sea and Second Home by the Sea.
Yeah, those are good. Those are good tunes.
Abacab, good song.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say anymore. I agree with you.
That's it. That's fucking it, dudes. That is it. Even songs like, okay, yeah, there's stuff like Throwing It All Away, Throwing It All Away. It's a Phil Collins solo song, man. It is. Tony Banks started writing Phil Collins solo songs, okay? And again, they're not going to argue with it because it made them fucking millionaires. And you know what? If I was in their position, maybe I would have done it too, because they were always the prog band from the prog era, the first wave of prog, as I named it. And I'm probably not the first guy that ever said that. They were the band that could kind of write pop tunes.
And I think actually Banks is quoted as saying it's like back in 74, 75 or something like that they were trying to develop the chops to write a popular pop song. And I think, when he was quoted as saying that was when they were still pretty much in the red. They hadn't toured yet. Every tour they went out on, they lost money. And it wasn't until Trick of the Tail that they did. So I can understand. It's like, we love what we're doing, but, we got to pay the bills. And how do you pay the bills? It's not by writing another Supper's Ready song. So I get that, and that toes the line of being a sellout.
Well,
to your hardcore diehard fans, or paying the bills, and still try to find a balance between the two of this.
Here's the thing.
They kind of did because they still were doing Home by the Sea songs like that. They would include one of those. But that was like the only track on that album that was prog. That was it. Everything else was more mainstream or more accessible. So that's where they ended up.
Well, here's how I look at it. They don't have to make any excuses to me or any apologies to me. They provided a lot of great fucking music. Many of those albums are some of my favorite albums, although as I said at the very beginning, Genesis is not the album, or Genesis is not the band that I reach for in the prog sphere the most. It's probably fourth or fifth down the list. And some of that is affected a little bit by what they did from after 1980 on. And it's not like I've got salt about it. It's just I can't fucking unhear the stuff that they did after 1980. Do you get what I mean?
I totally agree, because that was when it was the combination of Phil Collins. That was that was the era of Uncle Phil, starting in 1980 with Duke. It was Uncle Phil was just got overexposed with his solo career, with Genesis, with Miami Vice. He wrote a song for a movie in the time, and I couldn't understand it. It's like, how is this guy blowing up? It's Phil Collins, It's like it's just pop crap, This isn't the guy that I knew. But anyways, yeah. So it just just soured me on the band, and Phil Collins especially.
Now, if somebody came up to me and handed me tickets, good tickets, not shitty fucking nosebleed tickets to drive to Philly. Somebody came up and said, "Hey, here's 15th row down on the floor to see Genesis." Now, I'd probably go, and I heard a couple of things that, it's rough seeing Phil sit, but he still sounds pretty good, and the band's pretty good, and they're doing a cool acoustic section where they break down some of their bigger songs, some of the old stuff, and they're doing stuff. But I would not pay for a ticket to see that now, not any money. Even if they were playing down in Lancaster, which is 15 minutes away from me. I mean, maybe if it was $10 or $15 ticket, I might go, but I definitely wouldn't pay $200 like most of those gigs are probably starting at. And, there's songs that, I hear and I've heard a million times, whether it's in movie soundtracks or TVs or commercials, for fuck's sake. Tonight. It's like, tonight, I don't want to hear that song ever again.
Buy a car tonight.
What's that?
It's like, buy a car tonight.
Yeah, right. Buy a car
use a commercial.
Tonight.
Yeah.
And, but it's made those guys rich. And if I was in their position, would I do and have done what they did? Probably. But I don't, it's not one of those things like, man, I just don't respect you guys anymore. It's not that. It's just, no.
Yeah.
I just don't like the fucking drivel that you're putting out.
Yeah.
And hopefully they don't do any more, because I'll not buy that like I didn't buy any of this other stuff.
Yeah.
And they don't really give a fuck what Jeff Kiefer thinks about their music. So I don't think I'd go see Genesis today because of Phil Collins' health issues. I had the opportunity to see him 3 times, and but Phil needs your money, man. He needs to pay some ex-wives.
Well, yeah, of course he can get that from all the other fans that he, it seems like the fans that the band made from 1980 on was probably like 4 times the amount of fans that existed before 1980.
You bet.
So all those fans can definitely,
pay for
go see him. But I was able to see him twice. Like I said, I was able to see him in 2007, and I thought that was a pretty cool show. Because they weren't selling an album or anything like that, so they didn't have to focus on their latest album, release, whatever. They didn't have to back it, so they just selected whatever songs they wanted to play. And
Lee, did you ever see him?
No, and I was just thinking, like, when we get around to talking about Yes, we're probably gonna have a similar type of story.
We talking about who?
When we start talking about Yes, we're probably gonna have a similar type of narrative when we get around to this point. No, I never saw them, and they did have that 2021 tour, but I just missed it. I don't really have a desire, and it's like, Jeff, like, my experience with finding Genesis was very similar to yours. It's just, 20 years later, 30 years later, whatever the math is. But, like, I did hear the pop hits, but then I was like, oh, yeah, shit, the 70s stuff, that's what I love. And then, I don't like any of the stuff. I've never even listened to Calling All Stations. I've just heard it's terrible. It doesn't have Phil on vocals, and it's supposed to be one of the worst prog albums.
The last one, right? The very last one?
It's like,
it's got that
late
guy
90s.
Ray Wilson. got that
I
guy
heard it's
Ray
terrible.
Wilson that was in Asia,
yeah.
I think, and I listened
yeah.
to a little bit of it. And I was like, "Fuck this, man! I can't even listen to it."
Yeah.
And part of it is, especially for like Chuck and I, we're getting long in the tooth. We're old. We're kind of nostalgic because we're getting old, and we'd like to harken back to when we can remember when we were young, which is hard for us to do at this stage. But
Speak for yourself.
okay. Yeah, it's not for me. And that was the whole idea behind the thumbnail, was to be like, these albums, fuck that. That's the stuff right there. And I kind of had I knew Chuck felt that way. And I was pretty sure you felt that way too. So I was hoping, once I started doing it, and I think it might've been Rick, he's like, well, what if Lee likes those albums? I'm like, well, fuck it. He's going to pretend like he doesn't like it.
I don't.
Lee can bite mine.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, guys?
No, I thought this was really good. Thank you for having me.
Well, I appreciate you brought a lot to the table, and Chuck, a lot of good stuff there. Did I let you talk?
Yeah.
You're gonna let me talk now? Okay, I've been here for 4 hours.
I said, did I let you talk? I didn't say you could talk now.
Oh, okay. No,
Yeah,
yes,
you want to know something funny? I had these ready, but I never had to pull them out.
Hey, man.
I gotta get me some of those.
I fucking I'm gonna do what I want to do.
I know.
I got them for part of my corporate job, like sales.
That is funny.
And it's like for like when you're doing like demos and presentations.
Yeah.
Right.
That was hilarious.
Those are funny. You better mail those to Chuck.
So I can get kicked off.
Yeah.
Man, I'm getting tired. I want to go to bed. Let me hold up a card and Jeff will boot me.
Any final words, guys? We are going to do, just for anybody that's hanging out, I think there's going to be an after stream. I'm not sure if it's going to be here on Rick's, but I know, Lee, you got to hit the road. Yeah, I think we're going to do a post stream. Not sure if it's going to be on mine or Rick's. Just hang out for a minute or two, and I'll let you know. We are, Chuck and I, and Lee, Chuck, Lee, and I, very, very likely are going to hit Yes, and very, very likely are going to hit Crimson as well, King Crimson. I don't know when those are coming. I do have with Nick, we are planning to do Killing Joke's discography. It's probably just going to be Nick and I, because it's a lengthy discography, and if we do a bunch of people, it'll be like 5 hours long. And we'll probably still do pretty heavy duty stream on that. And okay, Rick is hosting a BS stream on his thing, so he'll send out links. I'll get those to anybody that wants them. Brian, why don't you join us? I don't know, Chuck, if you're going to split or hang out. But yeah, I got one with King's X coming up soon. Hopefully, I think with Austin Lund, which would be really cool. I'm going to do some mini deep dives. They're just going to be me. So you know what? I don't have to ask if anybody wants to say anything, because I'm the guy that's going to say shit. I got one coming on Stone Fury, one on Badlands, one on Tangerine Dream that I got to try to find somebody, and I've got an idea, and I don't know whether it's ever going to happen, but that's going to be an extensive one. So that may just be me too. But anyway, I appreciate those of you that tuned in, and any quick comments here? We'll just blast through a couple. You guys are all talking about, you're not really talking about,
Talk about In Flames for a minute.
Yeah, they're talking about In Flames and shit like that. So that's
we got to dig, and they just started
there.
talking amongst themselves. So
I will tell you, there won't be an In Flames deep dive coming. Sorry, guys, just how it is. There will be some more metal stuff coming for sure, though. So that's coming up. And Lee, I want to thank you, man. Appreciate it. You did a great job tonight. I would have liked to have seen more photos, but we were kind of in a pretty good role there.
Oh yeah, we were doing great. Yeah, I thought this was awesome. It was great.
And Chuck, killer stuff. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me. It was a treat going back and listening to Genesis all day and all night.
That's a great point. That
3 or
was
4
fun.
days.
That was fun, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
These things are cool, and the reason they're cool is they make you go back and kind of rediscover your love for those albums. Because once you get away from them, sometimes you just don't get back for years.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it was for me.
It's easy
to do.
I
mean, like today when I listened to Lamb, I was like, wow, I really forgot how great this album is.
And I agree. And I think the mix that I heard today was remixed in 2007. So it added some new
Fresh
stuff I didn't hear before. And I was very surprised because I was listening it through my laptop, which I never do. And I might start doing that a little bit more because the quality was really good. I mean,
yeah, I was listening on YouTube, and I was listening through this and through my headphones, and man, a couple of them. That's one thing. Maybe if we did mention or didn't mention it, Genesis's albums in general always were pretty stellar production-wise. They just had a lot of clarity. A lot of the mix always seemed to be nobody was overbearing, and they just sounded good. They were crystalline sounding, and good stuff. I'm glad we did this one because I was having a little trepidation midweek. Oh man, did I pick the right band to do this? And then, and thank you, Lee, for showing, and Chuck too, since I didn't have my stuff on me. So thank you for joining us, everybody, and we will catch you soon. There is going to be an after stream on Dreadful Minutes channel, so maybe we'll see a couple of you there shortly. All right.
I'll see you guys in the chat. And
peace out. We did it almost in 4. Well, what did I say? I said 3 to 4 hours, right?
Yeah, we hit the time mark. Pretty great.
Fuck yeah, dude. We did pretty good.
Right on.
See you guys.
All right,
See
Lee.
you guys.
See you.
Peace out.